was wrong to say. I wouldn't change a thing, 'cause in the story of our lives, the best of times through colored glass, time rolls on enough to let me move on past. But every little now and then it creeps on back to shade my smile.
morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be for all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth. Welcome to Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Bryan Willett, coming to you live from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains on this March 1st, 2022. Tonight we have Regan Forston here with us to talk about the emotional freedom technique, an extension of what we talked about with him last time. We tried to get him on the show in the first episode of this season, and we had internet issues, so he's back tonight to pick up where we left off. But first, I have a special announcement. So he'll be coming in segments 2 and 3, and segment 1 is going to be questions from the ether. And it's an important one that many of you need to hear. Don't go away. Everyone, how are you all doing this evening, this morning, this afternoon? People all over the world tuning in to spend the next 3 hours with us. And I am very grateful for that. I can guarantee you that your involvement and dedication to this show, and not just this show, but our ministries, means a great deal to me. So it's always such a pleasure to be able to offer this service to you and to be able to have this little time together once a week where we talk about the things that interest us, the paranormal, the esoteric, the spiritual, the religious, you name it. We discuss it on this show, and we simulcast it to every platform that we can, and we try to engage these topics with intelligence. Unfortunately, though, before we get to tonight's show, I have to do a questions from the ether that is a serious one. It's not going to be as much fun as they usually are, unfortunately, but it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be talked about. And so that's what we're going to be spending the first segment doing. I don't know how long this is going to take me, but we have Father Chris and Sister Mary Joan on standby when I am finished. And if we need to have more discussion during the first segment here, they will be here to join me for that. I don't think it's going to take the full hour to talk about this, but I want to be prepared because I just don't know. Okay? So essentially, let's just get started, and then we can get done with this and then move into segments 2 and 3 and have more fun talking about near-death experience and the emotional freedom technique with our wonderful guest, Regan Forston. So our questions from the ether, there's two. Okay, one is a general and one is a specific from a individual person. I'm not going to name anybody that asked these questions. I just want to talk about them because they kind of lead into a bigger issue that I also need to address tonight. And I'm going to try to do so with the utmost care and dignity and class. However, as you will see here, there's only so far I can go with that. And you'll understand why. Hopefully by the end of this segment, you'll understand why. But let's just get into it, and then we'll see where it takes us. Okay, so the first question that comes in from the ether is a one that I have received numerous times in different places, and it comes up from time to time. And that question, which is always a fun one, and you've probably seen them too, is I didn't think priests were allowed to use profanity. Yet I hear you cuss, so I'd like to know why you're allowed to do that. Well, first of all, just because I'm clergy doesn't mean I am restricted from the normal behavior of humanity, nor am I exempt from all of the bad behavior of humanity just because I'm a priest. And if you've ever known a priest of the Roman Catholic variety, you know that they tend to have sailors' mouths. Many of them do. It's just, when you get guys together, that sort of happens. And there's a lot of pretense in this idea that, I'm a good little Christian and I have to be representing being a good little Christian, so we can't say bad words. This is not, what is it, Ed Flanders from the Simpsons? We're not that, okay? And there's a reason for that, okay, which I'm going to actually talk a lot about here tonight, and it's kind of related to the whole overall message that I have. But the fact of the matter is, we're people, and we live like people, okay? Which doesn't mean that we don't strive to maintain a higher standard, but when it comes to living in the world, we live in the world, particularly diocesan priests and priests that live normal lives like I do. And the independent movement, we don't really have the luxury of being completely taken care of by the church. So, we are more in the world than most people. A lot of us carry secular jobs or employment or have secular responsibilities. And so that sort of comes with the territory. There is no rule that says priests cannot use profanity. It happens. Just the same reason that you use profanity. It happens. Okay. And, you might even say, well, you say these things and you say it publicly. I don't put like F ... so that, I don't actually use the word. No, I say the word. I write the word. I don't use pretense. I'm too involved and too concerned with authenticity to play games like that. So if I'm going to use profanity, I'm going to use profanity. I'm not going to, skate around the issue. Okay. So that's why that I'm allowed to, because there's no restriction that says we can't, take a vow of non-profanity. It does not exist. Okay. But there's reasons why I do it, because I'm not actually a vulgar person. I'm typically not. I have my moments, and those moments are usually a type of catharsis for me. But there's one issue that tends to produce vulgarity more than anything else. And that is the fact that I, in particular, have to deal with countless political extremists on a near regular basis. In a special way. All of you do too, because if you're on social media, you're dealing with it. It's always an issue. It's always something that's happening. But it's more of an issue for me because there are people from these political camps that come right out and attack me. They make it almost a hobby of doing this. And after years of having to deal with this, I have learned that the best way to communicate with them is to not try to play little pretentious games and try to present myself as like the good little Christian, but to meet them at their level. I've always been the kind of person that does that. I don't like to sit in an ivory tower and looking down and be like, how holy I am. I'm so much better than you. I don't ever say that. In fact, I'm the first one to say I'm probably worse than you. The only thing that might make me better is that my commitments to God are severe. I'll admit that. Probably more severe than most people in the world. But that doesn't necessarily make me a better person. It just means that that's where I've put my dedication. So you might remember not too long ago, I was trolled by a practically neocon site, Catholic Answers Forum. Remember that one? It wasn't as though Catholic Answers actually published something about me, but there was somebody that went to this forum. It's now since been closed, thank God. But it's neocon. It's extreme conservatism, and I don't have much respect for that any more than I have for the progressive liberal variety. I don't like extremism. I'm a moderate in every possible way that I can be, spiritually as well as politically, which means that I'm usually everybody's enemy, because people are gravitating more and more towards one of the two ends of the spectrum, and they're losing their sight of the middle way. That's just not going to be something that happens to me. So I'm usually everyone's enemy because of that. But this happened, and, Catholic Answers refused to do anything about it. And it stayed up there for a long time until they shut their forum down, I guess because of lack of funding. And that was the end of that. That article went the way of the dinosaur, and I don't have to deal with it anymore because it was coming up at that time about sort of like result 4 or 5 when you typed in my name on Google. And it was very libelous, very disparaging. And it was illegal, but we didn't know who wrote it. So there was not much we could do about it. And then some of you might say that you're surprised by that because I seem to be coming down harder on progressive liberal extremists. And I think I do actually come down harder on progressive liberal extremists for a couple of reasons. One, I have more of my friends are of the liberal side than the conservative side. I'm on TV. All right. It's no secret that television tends to have more liberals involved in that industry than conservatives. So I know more people that are in that camp, and then even friends. I tend to have more liberal friends than conservative friends. And I don't really have a problem with either one of them because typically they're not extremists. But I come down very hard on progressive liberal extremists because they tend to give me more trouble than the conservatives do. Both sides have given me trouble, but progressive liberals give me greater trouble. And so that kind of is the lead-in to where some of this profanity comes from, because once you've dealt with these people, you realize that talking nice to them doesn't work. Trying to take the high road doesn't work. You know, being kind and considerate and being the good little Christian, they see as weakness. Your kindness is treated as weakness. So the more kind you are, the more they come after you. The more they think they have the upper hand. I see that actually more with the progressive liberal side than the conservatives, but both sides are guilty. So in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. So I tend to reach people where they're at. Oh, you want to get dirty? I can get dirty just with the best of you. Being a priest doesn't mean I'm not going to roll around the mud and kick your ass. Right? Does not mean that. So this is the preface to the next question, which takes us into this segment. The second question was, Bishop, did you see this article written about you on Something Awful forums? I don't know if you guys know about this site. It's kind of a loathsome site, really. I mean, it's got the kind of people that go and ask other people what kind of ammunition that you need for a type of gun, and then, you know, they go on mass shooting sprees and kill people. This has happened on their site. That's the kind of people that frequent this location. And then when you go and you read the articles and you read the responses to the articles on this this forum, it's pure trash. It's human excrement of a site. So apparently somebody wrote an article about me on there. And so I'm going to break this article down for you, and we're going to talk about it here. So get yourselves ready, you know, pour yourself a drink, sit back and relax. I'm going to take you through this because I've never seen such garbage as what I'm about to share with you. And I'm going to not only share with you the garbage so that you can live it with me, but I'm going to correct all of the garbage as well, because there is nothing but mistruths and half-truths and misdirections and outright lies and, other things we'll get to in a moment. So essentially what it is that the author goes by, I guess the handle, or if you want to call it a pen name, and let's be real here. I mean, this person's working on a level of class that is just so exceptional. The name is Huge Pubes a Plus. So classy. That's a classy name right there. So Huge Pubes a Plus wrote this article about. Do you remember that little experiment, that little metaphysical experiment we were trying a little while back, where we were going to take charge, and not religiously, not spiritually, not with prayer, but with intention, to end the pandemic and all of the negative effects, and then I was going to metaphysically sacrifice an expensive bottle of bourbon as the means to facilitate the intent. Remember that one? We all got together and we were doing this. I think it was like, 3:00 in the afternoon. We tried this for a while. And yeah. Well, I mean, this person decided to write an article about that. But of course, they didn't write an article about this with my permission. This is something they decided to do on their own. And then they decided to twist and turn it in the nice, progressive, liberal, extremist fashion to their bias. So I'm going to break this down for you, okay? So I'm not going to read everything because there's just too much bullshit here to read, but I'm going to just give you a bulleted list of all the things that I feel need to be addressed. So I'm going to read verbatim. Most of this stuff is verbatim. Some of it I'm going to paraphrase. Okay, so this is from Huge Pubes a Plus on the Something Awful forum. Last week, he decided to get his flock involved in ensuring the pandemic ends before his New Year's Eve Las Vegas holiday, and he doesn't have to waste his $260 bottle of Elijah Craig. Actually, it's look it up. It's a $1,800 to $2,000 bottle of Elijah Craig, not $260. There's two 23-year-old Elijah Craigs, and one is in the $200 range. The other is in the $2,000 range. And the one I'm talking about is the latter. Okay. So let's get the price right. All right. You want to be a writer? You want to write articles about me? You don't want to consult with me? Then you get your fucking facts straight. Okay. Swear number one. Now you know why I have to swear. All right. Let's go to number two. Ever since Facebook put him in Facebook jail because he posted a picture of Hitler on his profile, he decided to abandon mainstream social media and start his own. No, that's not what happened. You can go back and look at my, I think, 1 hour announcement that I made live to my entire audience, where I discuss what happened. I was talking about the political extremism that I was seeing on both sides, conservative and liberal parts of the equation, and I was likening it to the precursors to how Hitler rose to power. And I used a quote from Hitler, and I posted it on Facebook that showed the parallel to what's happening in the world today, and that's what got me banned from Facebook. I did not put Hitler in my profile picture, you moron. Number three, it's full of people chatting. They're talking about the Nicolean network now. It's full of people chatting about the paranormal, aliens, and plenty of anti-masker QAnon bullshit. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of people talking about paranormal and aliens because the people that are interested in my work are going to be people that are interested in the paranormal. So why the hell are you there if you don't like this conversation? Well, I already can answer that. So we don't even need to address that one because I know why that person's there. QAnon. I haven't seen much QAnon stuff because I'm not a fan of QAnon. I criticize and ridicule QAnon. So let me tell you, I would be very upset on the Nicolean network if I was constantly being hit with QAnon messages. Anti-mask? Yeah, I'm anti-mask and I've explained why. Because it doesn't work. Number 4. He holds mass every Saturday night in his basement. No, it is not my basement. It is the first floor of my home. And the reason why it doesn't have any windows in there, if you've noticed, is because it is supposed to be the home theater that we have converted into the chapel. Something that I didn't really have to do, by the way. I do it because there's so many of you who get something out of it. And the person who wrote this, clearly, if you're not getting anything out of it, then why the hell are you tuning in? Number 5, The real reason we were forced through, she's talking about something I said. The real reason we were forced through a lockdown last year was so we didn't notice the aliens visiting Earth. This guy literally preaches COVID is a hoax to force us to stay indoors so we don't see the UFOs and aliens our government is actively meeting with. I have never preached that. Let's get something straight. There's a difference between entertainingly and theorizing with guests who are UFO experts about the rare and interesting synchronicities between government disclosure and COVID-19 happening at the same time. There's a difference between speculating with these guests to make an interesting show and preaching something. You have never heard me preach that, because that would be what we call from the pulpit, and that is not something I would preach from the pulpit. Okay, so there's a little saying that I've heard that says, are you a professional moron or are you just a gifted amateur? That's my question for Huge Pubes of Plus right now. That's my question for you. Maybe you'll answer. We'll find out. Moving on. Number 6. Now this person's doing a play-by-play of my life. He's ending basement church tonight, begging for money, and please buy the blessing kits on the website. We need cash. Upset that a nonprofit 501c3 federally tax exempt organization is asking for donations. That's strange. Do you go after St. Jude's hospital when they ask for money? Do you have to go after Red Cross when they ask for money? Let me tell you, nonprofit organizations never have the money they need to operate. And if they don't ask, they don't get anything. Number 7, a few weeks ago, he went off on a tirade about how the pandemic lockdown was forced on us because the aliens arrived and the government wanted us inside so we didn't notice. That never happened. Show me where that happened. A tirade? Do you know what a tirade is? Again, I ask you, are you a professional moron or just a gifted amateur? I'm leaning towards the latter there. I don't think there's a professional bone in your body, but let's keep going here. Oh my God, this is a good one. This is a good one. Okay, this is a writer, by the way, aspiring writer. And teacher. This is a teacher. Holy poo poo. Oh, is that good English now? Is that what they're teaching in your English classes? Is that what you teach your students? Holy poo-poo? He just admitted that they will trick people into letting them come to perform an exorcism because they try to back out. I trick people into letting me come to perform an exorcism. Do you know how hard it is to get me to come to perform an exorcism? I say no to everybody. My staff is fed up with me because I don't take cases. You have to bend over backwards and do the spider walk up the stairs before I'll take a case these days. Okay? I am not trying to get in to your house to perform an exorcism because I have no incentive in doing that. There's nothing in it for me. It is just a hell of a lot of work for me and a hell of a lot of energy expent, and something I would rather not ever have to do. I do it out of spiritual obligation, and that's it. I don't trick people into coming to perform an exorcism. We have sometimes used, and what they're referring to is I was talking about how sometimes if they know we're coming, it will interfere with the investigation. So we have to work with the family to be very discreet when we're arriving at the house, so that we can slowly manage the situation. But see, this person doesn't have the class or the sophistication or even the frame of mind to give the proper context to any of these things. Only interested in pushing the agenda, which is to basically shit on my face. Number 9, takes a screenshot of a picture that I posted of a exchange I had with a telemarketer where I was sick and tired of being called 20 times a day, and I responded back through text, and they responded back, and I posted that, and they said, I'm rather shocked he posted this image with his phone number visible. It wasn't my phone number, idiot. It was theirs. You're not too bright. Like I said, you're just a gifted, I don't even know if you're a gifted amateur. You're just a moron. Number 10. He's into astrology, tarot cards, Carl Jung, although was into pagan stuff and orgies, but the Christians ignore that part. Oh, now you're crossing into the realm of libel. Orgies, huh? Really? Ah, interesting. You just broke the law with that one. Number 11, been too busy to pay attention to what the good bishop is up to. He appears to be eating and drinking well, has expensive tastes and cuts of meat and alcohol. Buy those blessing kits, folks. Yeah. Because the charitable work I do through this church is paying for all my expensive tastes and cuts of meat and alcohol. Because this church does not pay me a living wage, have to maintain secular sources of income. But you're not talking about that. And you obviously know. If you're detailing my life to this degree, watching every little fucking thing I do, I think you know how I'm able to pay for these things. What are you, jealous that I'm living such a better life than you? Well, you know why that is? Because I actually do good things with my time in my life. I don't write shit like this on some fucked up forum. That's why you don't have these things, because you're wasting your life away doing bullshit with it. I don't waste my time. So my time produces results. And yes, I live very well because of it. Not on the church's dime, on my own hard work. Number 12, she's talking to some of her little fans now. We are talking about a man in Atlanta, Georgia, who routinely tricks people into having exorcisms performed by him and his two sisters and appearing on cable ghost hunting shows. He created his own Catholic church and performs mass in the basement of his house. I created my own Catholic church. Oh, is that what happened? Well, I would love for you to fill me in on this, because I wasn't there for it. I didn't create this. I have said it numerous times that this was a conglomeration of people from the Orthodox, the Roman Catholic, the Independent Sacramental movement, and I was commissioned to take over this tradition. I did not invent it. I did not create it. And if you had been part of the people that did, you would know that I didn't want it. I don't trick people into having exorcisms performed on them. Now we get to the liberal progressive part of the equation. She goes on some more insults about me and then says, except he's an anti-vaxxer, anti-masker, asking his flock to pray the pandemic restrictions are lifted so he can go to Vegas on New Year's Eve. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've had all of my vaccinations. Thank you very much. I have criticized this. I've criticized this particular vaccine, quote unquote, because it doesn't act like a vaccine. Vaccines eliminate the disease. I had the polio vaccine. I've never caught polio. All right? Now, if you feel that this therapeutic is of value to you, have it. I'm all for vaccines that work. I haven't seen enough evidence in this one because we still have COVID-19. So I guess it depends on how you define it working. I don't define that as working. Maybe you define it differently. That doesn't make me an anti-vaxxer. I've had all my vaccines, and so is my son. We are a pro-vax family. Now, I put out a post a little while ago about a client that we lost to death. The person died. He was a Muslim. We confirmed possessed by a jinn. I've talked about this case numerous times. The person died, and she puts a screenshot of that post on this forum. And some people were asking her I don't know what he's talking about. And she comes on and says, he is talking about someone being possessed, but since he was a Muslim and therefore not baptized, there was nothing he could do to help him. Gee, what a shame. Welp, back to impressing everyone with my expensive food and drinking habits. Buy more blessing kits and sign up for my online classes. There's a limitation to what a priest can do with a person who's not baptized. Whether you like it or not, that's not my rules. That's the rules of Catholicism. We still work to help him. The reason why we weren't able to do more is because he got his ass landed in jail. And he had a blood clot while he was there. Probably from one of those fucking vaccines that you are accusing me of being against. And don't tell me it doesn't happen, because I know people that have in real life. Okay? It does happen. So, isn't this beautiful? Isn't this beautiful? And you know what? Maybe we'll be so lucky that Huge Pubes of Plus is joining us tonight, because they usually do. You know what? They usually do. We're usually so blessed that this person is following us very, very closely, listens to all the shows, goes to Mass even. But see, they have this thing about aliases here. And on YouTube, they use a different one. So I guess a Huge Pubes of Plus would be a little bit too much. So here on YouTube, you probably have known them as Nike 2422. Isn't that right? Nike 2422. Are you out there tonight? Right? Let's hear it for Nike 2422 for that wonderful article. Oh, you're such a wonderful, wonderful writer. You see, everyone, Nike here has this unhealthy personal interest in my work and my life, wouldn't you say? Kind of creepy, huh? Crosses the line into cyberbullying and cyberstalking, I would think. At the very least, it's libel. At the very least, it's copyright infringement in some places, all those screenshots. We'll talk about that. Isn't that right, Nike 2422? Or since, your interest is clearly so much moving in a personal direction, you want to take personal attacks out on me. How about we make this a little bit more personal? We're largely a church community here, motivated by authenticity and lack of pretense, right? So let's use first names. You don't mind that, right? Kelly, you don't mind, Kelly, if I call you by your first name? Way to keep it classy, Kelly. Huge Pubes of Plus. Wow. Kelly, the aspiring writer, teacher, and yellow journalist. I'm so impressed. But unlike professional writers, you see, like when Rolling Stone magazine reached out to interview me, they asked my permission to everything that I talked about, everything that I provided them. Kelly decided to go and write this one behind my back. And you know what? She also used screenshots of my conversations and some of your conversations too, reposting to the public the very public Something Awful forum, screenshots that have your profile pictures and full names applied from our Nicolaitan network that resides behind a registration wall where there is an expectation of privacy. That's not legal, Kelly. You broke the law. You can't do that. You can't do that. I've confirmed it. And, Kelly, you're obsessed, troubled even over so many of the things that I talk about. You make fun of the guests on this show. You make fun of the callers. You do updates on my life, including my marriage anniversary. What are you're so miserable of a despicable parasitic person that you're angry that I have a successful marriage of 20 years and that my affection for my wife has never waned in all that time? Does that hurt you? Maybe the reason why no one's ever treated you with that kind of affection is because you have a nasty predisposition. All your progressive, liberal, extremist feelings hurt over my position on masks and vaccines. Grow up. Oh, grow up. You're older than I am, for God's sake. Grow up. This isn't middle school. So here's the thing, okay? I'm an incredibly generous spirit. I really am. And in my tremendous generosity, okay, I'm going to offer you a solution to this little problem that we have here. Okay. I'm going to give you 1 week to delete that article and forget that you ever saw me with your little stupid cousin on when you were watching Ghost Adventures all that time ago. And if you do that, I'll forget that I ever had the displeasure of knowing you. Right? But if you don't, if you leave it up, I would suggest you pray and pray very hard that, Sister Mary Joan and Sister Maximilian and Father Chris Yates all stop me from prosecuting you to the furthest extent that the law will allow, because I absolutely will. I'm not as nice as they are. They are far better Christians than I ever will be. And I have no tolerance for parasites like you. So if you're wondering why this bishop uses so much profanity now, maybe, because of the kind of vermin I have to deal with on a regular basis. And what's the moral of the story here, Kelly? Have you thought about it? Because I want you to really consider this the one and only cease and desist letter you're ever going to get from me. That's how charitable I'm being right now. But I'm also asking, what's the moral of the story? Have you figured it out? Well, if you haven't, let me spell it out for you. The moral of the story here, Kelly, is don't fuck with me. We'll be back after this.
Come on.
before the storm. Things aren't as they were before. You best start bracing. Did you think you could keep us out? Shut the gates, forget us now. Tides are changing. Can you hear the sound? Can't stop us now. We're not back in town, know what we're doing. Things are about to change, it's evolution. Voices shake the ground, you feel it moving. We're the revolution. Can you hear the sound? Beneath your feet, with a whisper in the trees. Do you feel us watching? Hunger in our eyes, victories on our minds. It's our time to rise. Can you hear the sound? Can't stop us now. We're not back in town, know what we're doing. Things are about to change, it's evolution. Voices shake the ground, you feel it moving. We're the revolution. Can you hear the sound? Don't know what we're doing. Things are about to change, it's evolution. Voices shake the ground, you feel it moving. We're the revolution.
Devil in a red dress, call 911, I'm a killer. You know I hate to confess. Bang bang, got my hand on the trigger. The devil in a red dress, call 911, I'm a killer. You know I hate to confess. Bang bang, got my hand, call.
Welcome back, everyone, to Vestiges After Dark, and now the fun part of the show. I see a lot of you wondering whether or not you were mentioned in these screenshots that were taken behind the registration wall. We have screenshots of the entire article, and our moderators will be reaching out to any members of the Nicolayan network that had their privacy violated by this parasite. So you'll be informed. Okay, if you want to get in on the lawsuit, assuming we have to take it that far, you will be invited to do so. Hopefully, she's smart and she takes it down. She's obviously too much of a coward to show up tonight. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, I am sorry, everyone, for having to, have had to spend the first part of the show discussing that, but it's something that needed to be addressed. That's my work. That's detriment to this work. And sometimes the hard message is the one that has to be given, as much as I try to make this fun and entertaining. And that's what this show was created for. If people are going to sit there and shit on it, well, I'm not going to let that happen. But joining us here is Sister Mary Joan and Father Chris Yates. How are you both tonight?
Hey, good evening, everybody. So, yeah, I would just like to say to the keyboard warrior, spineless jellyfish, that especially when it comes to talking about clients that passed away, be careful how you tread and talk of the dead, because one day you're going to be the dead.
We all will.
Really
it's something we all have to face. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was very disrespectful.
I especially grew very fond of this young man, and we helped him the best way we could. But being institutionalized, we were cut off from having contact with him. And the day his mother called and told me that he died, I was on the phone with her for 2 hours trying to talk her out of thinking it was her fault. She was on a ledge, and I talked this woman down. Religion didn't matter. Politics didn't matter. Her son was dead. So just think before you write something stupid on social media, because real people are involved and real people are getting hurt.
She doesn't have the intellect for that. It's very clear by the type of people she hangs out with and the type of form she's utilizing. I mean, Something Awful is basically a degenerate site for degenerate writers. Yeah, she's obviously so upset about the way I eat and the scotch I drink and all of these things, and it's like, well, the reason you don't live this life is because you do these things. This is what you're doing. You're not putting your effort into the things that matter. Yeah, you could live a good life too, but you choose to live in this pit of sewage instead of helping people. She gets what she's.
I have done a theological breakdown of this stuff for you, but rather than give that, I'll be on the air and on the record saying you are a liar, sir, because you have lied by saying that I'm a better Christian than you.
Okay, St. Paul, I'll take that one.
See, I had you worried for a second, didn't I?
Yeah.
No, look, I mean, the profanity thing is something which, I grew up in Manchester, from...
you guys know how to swear out there. There's no question about it.
Yeah, that's right. We learned from the Irish, so they can put swear words inside swear words. It's quite the gift. And so, but I think, I do want to say, look, I'm not saying, isn't it wonderful when people, swear their heads off? I'm not, nobody really wants to say that.
No.
But at the same time, it's not the same thing as something far worse. You see, profanity is related to language, and language evolves. Look, there's things that we use in everyday language that nobody would blink at now, which would have caused Victorian ladies to faint.
Yes.
And so language is what language is.
Father, you could not, I don't know what it was like in the UK, but on American television, you could not use the word pregnant in the 19...
I don't think that was ever a thing in England.
I think it was in the 1950s. Pregnant was censored.
With child.
Well, you Americans are still quite sensitive about people breastfeeding. I don't know what that's about.
It's puritanical. It's this puritanical crap that never went away. Yeah,
it's weird,
I'd rather
it is
see you
weird.
breastfeeding than to listen to your baby cry because it's hungry.
Exactly.
Satisfy that child, woman.
I don't get it, but so I think language is language, and it's not static, and so it evolves and changes, and you can't control it, and really trying to control other people's language is just absurd, really. That's why freedom of speech is placed up there. It's not to say that everything everybody says is worthwhile listening to, but it's to say that, well, you cannot put a control mechanism on it. But there is something far worse than profane speech. Well, there are two things. One is taking the Lord's name in vain, which of course is a commandment. So about cursing God, which is really about taking the place of God in speech. I think it's really the essence of that commandment, which people don't think twice about doing and wouldn't report you for, no doubt. But the other thing that's much more serious, which you've spoken about, we talk about libel, defamation, slander. These are all expressions of the sin of calumny, and the sin of calumny is rife. Social media, of course, has made it so. And so calumny is actually way more serious than swearing at somebody or calling an idiot. You know, calumny is seeking to destroy a person's reputation.
Which is exactly what this individual was setting out to do. There's no question about it.
And it's become acceptable. Basically, we call calumny has an app. It's called Twitter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and so
I know all about that one.
and actually, in the life of the church, you know, people highly involved at all levels of the church think nothing of committing calumny, and yet they'll point the finger at people for all sorts of stupid things like swearing. You know, it's just pathetic. Mm-hmm. And so I was also amused. I did message Sister Mary Joan in our little Zoom chat here that if, even though it's not true, if the greatest criticism of you is that you say mass in your basement, well, they better not learn any proto-church history.
I know, right?
What do you think they would? You know, the Romans were not celebrating openly in the air. The Roman Church, they were in what we now call the catacombs. Well, and they may look nice and pretty with frescoes on the wall now, but that's not how they started.
It's not how they started.
In the basement.
And it's like
by lamplight.
It's a particular offense to me because it's not my basement. I wish it were my basement, but I'm taking up a perfectly good room in my house for this church, a room that we really could use because I've got my son with his 16 different video game consoles all hooked up to my living room television. And if I want to watch TV and he wants to play a video game, who do you think wins? It's usually him.
The kid.
Yeah. So it's like if I had my home theater that I could go down to and just quietly vegetate in a nice soundproof room in the dark, I would love that. But no, I give it to the church. So yes, I wish it were the basement. It's not the basement. Oh my God. It just really irritated me. And not for the reasons that people would think. It's not about the humility of it. It's about the fact that I need that room and I don't have that room. Well, we have a fantastic guest. We tried so hard to get him on episode 1. We loved him that much. We wanted to start the season off with him, and the whole internet crashed, and no one knew what happened, and I could not even come back to tell everybody, hey, look, this is going on. Eventually, I was able to get a message out, but by then it was too late to get the show going again. So he has graciously agreed to come back, and I had that big announcement. So he's here for the next segment, and this one as well. For the next 2 hours, we have Regan Forston back, expert in the near-death experience. And tonight, he's going to be talking about the emotional freedom technique, which after the first segment, I'm going to need. So, Regan, I am so happy to have you here with us. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, good. I really missed you guys.
Yeah, we missed you.
Back, Regan. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just feel like I could just sit in the living room with a beer and talk to you guys all night long.
Well, we can make that happen.
We can make that happen. You just tell us. Just tell us when you're coming.
We can make it happen.
It might be bourbon scotch, but you know what? I have a full bar. I can get you whatever you want.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's good. So I was going to ask Father Chris there, you guys been getting some rain, I hear. Is that in your part of?
Yeah. I was going to get some gopher wood and build an ark. So it's I'm in New South Wales, sort of in Newcastle, so just 2 hours north of Sydney. So the bigger problems have been further north, in South Queensland and in northern New South Wales, where there've been serious. I mean, I think bigger floods than people that have lived there for 50 years can remember. So yeah, but this is whereas here the heavy rain has been in. We've had a very wet summer in general. For Australia, we've had a great deal of rain, and so but we're pretty fortunate where we live. It really would have to be Ark territory to for us to flood right here, but I've lived in places that do flood. But this is the land of if we're not in bushfires, we have rain and we have floods.
That's right. You get the bushfires and the rain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's probably a lot of mud flying around because of all the fires, when the rain comes and then you got nothing but mud,
Yes.
So wow.
I do nothing but clear mud out of my
quagmire.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it only ever comes in when it's flooding. So you can't preemptively get it out. You've got to be stood in the rain getting it out. So that's life. But it's very glamorous being a priest.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the good stuff.
Well, that's good. But yeah, I've been just busy doing these life between life sessions and with my clients doing the EFT, which has helped. I've had a few that it's really, really helped recently. So it's it's been good. Life's been, even though it's funny that, with this Ukraine thing going on and all this crazy stuff. I mean, you could just kind of feel the world shaping into a different form. It's shaking with COVID, and then you got these wars. Wow. It reminds me of what they're talking about in the last book in the Bible, which I'm forgetting right now. Sorry.
Revelation.
It's certainly rife out there.
Wars and rumors of wars.
Yeah.
Just to add to Bishop Bryan's crew of people calling him, alt-right and only signing with, I'm going to tell a kind of interesting article I saw, which I think it was an American publication, that at this current time of what's going on in the Ukraine was they thought the most important thing was to point out that the Ukrainian army wasn't across the transgender issue sufficient for them at the moment. Yeah. So that's the most important issue for the Ukrainian army right now, according to certain media in America.
A back seat right now. There are people dying.
But again, it just shows you where people's priorities lie.
It's like people are living in a fantasy land, and they just cannot wake up from it. I don't know.
Well, hopefully this will help. I mean,
well, that's what I was about to ask.
Terrible way to learn.
I'm hoping that there's like some spiritual enlightenment that comes with this. I mean, we need more people practicing these high-level techniques.
The greatest pity of it is this is Orthodox against Orthodox Christians. It's just catastrophically awful.
Oh, it's
and that's not to make a political statement. It's just awful.
It is.
And so and I know Russian Orthodox hierarchy, and I know Serbian Orthodox hierarchy, and and some Ukrainian as well, and they're all praying for the same thing. They're not the ones pulling the political strings, and so. But yeah, hopefully, sadly, we only learn through adversity.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that we've got this adversity. We better bloody learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's something. Yeah. I got before we talk about the EFT, I just wanted to tell you, because it had to do with a Christian client of mine who was the very last session I did last week. I had a very interesting experience with Jesus. And I just thought it was, the more I think about it, the more beautiful it was for her. She's actually from Guatemala. So we had a bit of a language difficulty, but the thing which was interesting was when she was in trance, somehow I could understand what she was saying, and she could understand me almost perfectly. It was just she wasn't speaking in Spanish. We're both speaking English. Her English was much better than my Spanish. But this woman, I tell you, when she walks in, she just lights up a room. She is, I've known her for quite some time, and she's got a progressive disease that's going to eventually kill her. But it doesn't matter. She just loves every day. She just, she prays morning, noon, and night to Jesus. And everybody that she touches kind of, it just feels like she uplifts them just in her. And she's a very simple woman, very, not rich by any means, just getting by with her family. What I told her was, because I'd seen her sometime and I knew about her disease, I said, look, I'm experimenting with this quantum healing hypnosis technique, which is similar to the Life Between Lives, except you try to get some healing from the other side. She was familiar with the guy down south. Oh man, he's been in disgrace lately because of sexual misconduct. But the healer that everybody would go down to, Jonathan, was it?
John of the something.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah. So she, she knew that healings were possible, and I said, look, let me just do this. I was going to do the session for free, and anyway, it ended up being like 4 hours that we did. But what was nice was, when we got to the other side, she went really, really deep. She said, "Oh, there's Jesus. There he is." And the way Jesus appeared to her was this giant statue. She says there was people, like we were like in heaven in a bit, and there were thousands of people looking up to Jesus. And just, she said the love was like she never felt before. But Jesus was this giant, like a cement statue. I mean, the way it appeared to her was like he was 10 stories high. I mean, it was huge. And what was interesting was as the people went to hug him, like part of his garment or whatever in there, they also became like a statue. And so all these people with all this love, they were just like melding into Jesus. And it was this most beautiful thing. And then she had some questions for Jesus. So I said, well, let's just ask the statue or something and see what's going on. And she was having issues with her daughter. And she asked Jesus what she could do. And then Jesus became alive. And this giant Jesus, like, bent down to her. And I said, what did he say? And she says, his bending, she knew what he was telling her to be more humble around her daughter, because she was always telling her daughter what to do and not listening to her and things like this. But it was like this giant Jesus kind of came to life. And then she had this beautiful conversation with him, and she didn't want to leave that place. I mean, it was just, just sitting next to her and just seeing her tears and the joy she had. And so for whatever reason, because we're just doing research on this, Jesus appeared as a statue, like in a church,
I wonder if it's like Christ the Redeemer in Rio.
The way?
Right.
Christ the
figure of Christ,
In Brazil.
Christ the Redeemer.
That massive one, yeah.
That's true. That's true. It's like the big one up on the hill that it's famous. So it's kind of like that. Yeah.
So Regan,
What you're talking about was John of God, and he was
John of
convicted
God
for sexual misconduct. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
surprise.
a shame because
Out of Brazil. Yeah.
But see, it's funny because as I've gotten older, I've really realized that God uses imperfect people a lot of times to teach.
If he didn't, he'd have nobody to use.
yeah, that's right.
I know. I wouldn't be around.
I'd be done. Regan, I would like it if you wouldn't mind. Regan, I would like if you wouldn't mind to maybe for members of the audience who might not have listened to your first appearance on this show to maybe just briefly talk about what it is that you do, and then we'll get into the emotional freedom technique.
Okay. Well, what I love to do the most is that I'm a researcher with the Newton Institute, and we're a religion neutral, let's say, institution. We're not trying to prove anybody's way or anybody's belief. We're just trying to find out what happens when you die, where you go, what do you do when you get there? Are people reincarnated or whatever, So we've had about 65,000 people go through a process that we have that's about 90% successful. And what we do is just like, when a client comes, we go through the process of them falling asleep. Instead of them waiting till they're tired and fall asleep, we just kind of do it on cue by getting to really relax. So when they get to just about to fall asleep, it's like they become so, as I'm watching them on my therapist couch, they're just motionless, like they're just kind of melting into the cushion beneath them. They're so relaxed. And there seems to be a point in there where God has given everybody a little switch. And that's when you can really communicate on a deeper level with the other side, with the angels, with God. It's like what the monks do in their sequestering, I mean, they go for days and weeks and everything by going into that state, and that's how they get their prophecy. That's how they get their, that's actually what brought the people out of the Dark Ages was the monks and the Gregorian chants. And, when they went from the Dark Ages to bringing everybody back to some sense of normalcy again. So when people do that, we have them prepare a list of questions before the session. Usually the session's 4 hours. There's about 2 hours talking to them, going over their questions. And so when they get there, because they're like a kid in a candy store, they're getting this. My clients have just told me, they said they always feel this love like it's of a higher, deeper level than what they feel here on earth. They just say, I can't explain except it just feels like buckets of this love and joy. And my clients that are Christian, well, when there's usually a guide or an angel, some of them see angels, even with wings sometimes not. It seems that the angels will appear to them or their guides in a way that they can accept, so that they don't get scared or anything like that. Right. But it's always about love and joy and trying to give people advice in their life for them to be more like all the things that they say in Corinthians. I forget the thing of it where, what is love and all those things, We don't know where this is going, but with 65,000 cases now, we have pretty much kind of mapped out heaven. Since I've seen you guys last time, I took a second trip there.
Oh, really?
Oh my God.
Oh, tell us about that. Yeah.
Well, what we did is 28 of us therapists decided to trade, and we did this on Zoom. So I did mine for a woman in Louisiana, and then she did hers. I'm here in California, and then on Zoom she did a session for me. And it was pretty much, we had 4 questions that we wanted to ask about COVID, about the vaccines and things like this. And then we took, all 28 of us wrote the sessions down, and then we had someone formulate everything, and we came out with graphs and charts, and pretty much everybody got basically the same thing. The first thing that they said over there is, all these people that died, don't worry about them. They're doing fine over there.
They're doing good. Well, that's comforting at least.
Yeah. It was like they weren't even concerned about COVID, because it was like such a minimal thing compared to the bigger picture of love and God and everything, So they wanted everybody to just say, look, people are here, they're fine. They're doing fine. When I just asked them, I said, well, what about the vaccines? Are they safe, or should people take them? And they said, personal choice. He says, if you think it'll help you, maybe it will.
See, I knew that God was a libertarian. I knew God was a libertarian. See, Father Chris, I was right.
Absolutely.
So it was kind of like non-committal on a lot of these things.
That's interesting.
What was interesting is why I was there, and what made this trip so real to me, because when this is happening, like I'm sitting in my chair and I'm aware that I'm going through the process, but then I'm seeing these images and all these emotions and stuff coming from being on the other side. So, and one thing they said is, sometimes God uses the dark to bring people to the light. That was kind of a theme. In other words, sometimes these negative things happen. Okay. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. But they wouldn't really say that, all this political stuff, vaccines and all that kind of stuff. But while I was there, the thing that I got so emotional about that surprised me was there was a council. There was 3 there. There was I forget if I had 4 or 3, because I was concentrating on the one I'm talking to. There was a teacher, a master named Late C. He's a Chinese gentleman. He was in my first session. He showed up again on my council, and he was showing off when he smiles, like now when I think of him, I can't help but smile, because he's so joyfully jubilant, and his smile is just like it just right through you, and you can't help but make your whole body feel good. And he had got he was showing me his new robe that he had. It was like Chinese and had all these embroidered things, and it was colorful and everything. And I said, nice, nice thing. But then they spread apart and they put a chair down, and Michael Newton, who's from the Newton Institute, who passed away 5 years ago, shows up. And I had never met Michael Newton before. But it was so interesting, because when he sat down and I saw him, I started bawling like a baby. There was like this something in me. I don't know. I don't know what it was. And so I asked Michael, I said, about his legacy and that. He says, I don't give a hoot about my legacy. He says, all I did, and all I'm hoping that you therapists now that are still alive will do, is just to do something to get people to go the next level up in their development. He says, whether people meditate, or you get them to pray, you get them to read the Bible, you get them to, he says, it doesn't matter. Just talk about God, like what you guys are doing. It's like you're doing this in a good way, so people can call in and feel like, wow, I want to be a better person right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So that I really liked, because there was no ego involved. It was just, he said, just get out there and just let people know that heaven is real, So that was pretty cool. And then I did ask Late C the question that I had that I mostly wanted to know. I said, okay, to this Master Late C, I said, this place that you're kind of allowing us to bring people to right now, that everybody basically has the same experience, it's like a tour guide of heaven. I says, is this heaven exactly? Or are there more levels or areas of heaven? And he jumps up out of his chair and he goes like that.
Yeah.
And I said, I got it, So,
well, it's interesting because both Christianity and Eastern religions like Buddhism and Hinduism all have a model or a framework for layers or multiple levels of heaven or the kingdom of heaven or however you want to classify it. So it seems to make sense that religion has seen this. So that's interesting.
It's like college, you finish one course, you go, as you progress and as you become more Christ-like or more God-like in a way, you have other things that are open to you that you didn't have,
So you're basically not just hanging around doing nothing.
It's that kind of reflection of, when Jesus says, in my Father's house, there are many mansions.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking, and it's 1 Corinthians 13 that you were alluding to. That's only to encourage people to pick up their Bibles and read it.
Thank you. I depend upon you to give me the references because I don't remember the numbers.
I don't want to say, I thought it was 13.
I can probably remember the book. I can't ever remember the chapter and verse.
It starts with the B.
I can pretty much. That's probably one of the only bits of the Bible I could read verbatim, probably. But,
well, go ahead and do it.
No. I won't do it. No. Oh, okay. If you want me to,
yes, I do. I do.
Though I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but have not love, I am nothing. And if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing.
Yes.
It's like love is patient, love is kind.
Yes.
Love does not boast. It doesn't seek its own way, and it carries on. I am going to curtail it because it's long, but now we view through depending on the translation, through a glass darkly. Then we will see face to face. Now I see in part. Then I shall know in full, even as I am fully known.
Yeah.
And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love.
Love.
And the word for love, which we mentioned this a couple of episodes ago. But the word for love is actually better translated as charity into English. It's what it was always said in the authorized version of the Bible was charity, because it's agape. It's which becomes caritas in Latin, which becomes charity into English. And so that's 1 Corinthians 13. But sorry, that was just an aside. I was just going to ask though, do you think that because I love that kind of description of the encounter. I think it's better to call it that than a place, because the word place is misleading, I think. But that encounter it is actually an encounter where there is no sin. Because in this world, big motivators, and it doesn't matter whether you go to Genesis or whether you look at what's going on in the world today, is fear and shame. So when Adam and Eve sin, they realize they're naked, so there's shame. They cover that up and they hide from God because there's both fear and shame.
Yeah.
And then they're sent out amongst the beasts to toil. And so that fear and shame kind of influences every encounter that we have as people, whether it's fear of being hurt emotionally, whether it's fear of being hurt physically, the fear of not having enough to eat, all of those things that are just part and parcel of this mortal life. And so it seems to me that you're describing what happens to people when those things are gone.
When they shed
they're
those
not
two
concerned.
emotions.
That's why you're not worried about your legacy, because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't
I had
matter anymore.
a client, she was before the council, and she was saying, what's keeping me from progressing, because I feel like I'm really progressing spiritually. I'm becoming a better person. And they just said fear. And that's all they said, fear.
Yeah.
Fear not.
Fear, yeah. And I was going to say too, in the Bible, I remember when St. Paul was getting stoned, and there's a different Bibles I've read, and the original one, I think it said Paul says he found himself in the highest heaven, and then in another thing I read, it was like to the third heaven, in another version or something like that. But yeah, there's a lot of talk in there about levels in heaven and everything. So whatever this is, so far with all the 65,000, it's all been about love. When you boil it all the way down, and we've not had any demons, anything, any time where anybody's ever been told or anything to do anything of a negative or nature. It's just so far all pluses, and it seems to just be a good thing. Like when, St. Paul, when the light got him on the way to Damascus, I think, and then he had to spend 40 days in the desert. It's kind of like that. It's I do have clients sometimes though, they'll call me or text me a few days later, and they'll go through a little bit of a depression, a little bit. It's kind of like coming back from a big seminar where you're all whoa, and you come home and then you go back in your routine,
back to the mundane.
Yeah, and you feel that way. So sometimes I have to help them with.
I was reminded we were talking about the Desert Fathers and Mothers on the show, I think last week.
I think it was last week. Yeah.
I mean, I've read on the Desert. I'm fascinated about the Desert Fathers, but I don't pretend to be an expert in them. But there is that one beautiful exchange which I remember between, I think it's Lot and Aberantony, where Lot is basically saying, "Oh, well, I keep the office. I fast. I do the things that a monk does. What more could I hope for?" Sort of thing. What more could I do? And Aberantony stretches out his hand, and there's tongues of fire on his fingers, and he says, "If you will, you could be all flame." And I think there's that kind of that beautiful interaction between. Actually, it is good to be a good monk. It is good to keep that rule of life. Those things are worthy. But that actually there's something beyond that, So in other words, we're not to worship those things. There's something beyond that.
Regan,
that is a path to.
On that note, Regan, I had a question for you that sort of, I think, was developing over our last conversation on this show. And then Father Chris just now sort of reminded me, and I'm curious because so much of your work, as you mentioned, that you're not doing this from any particular religious point of view. You're not trying to prove one worldview over another. You're just trying to objectively collect data that reveals what's going on with this thing that we call heaven and afterlife and what happens. So I'm curious because I'm curious to see if you've ever encountered this, and maybe you haven't, or maybe it's something that you could introduce into a future experiment if you want. But let me know what you think.
Okay.
I'm curious because obviously in Christianity, Islam, to a certain extent, even Judaism now, the goal is definitely to enter into like heaven or paradise or something of that nature. Okay, so that's like the highest reality. But in the East, Buddhism teaches, for example, that heaven is just one of the other illusions. There's 6 gati in Vajrayana, and you got 2 heaven realms, which is which is heaven itself, and then the demigod realm, and then you have the human realm, which is where we're at obviously right now. Then the animal realm, which we share with animals, but they are at a lower state of karma, if you will, according to this Vajrayana school of Buddhism. And then below that is the hungry ghosts, sort of the unrested spirits of the dead who cannot find any peace. And then that's the first hell realm, and then the second hell realm, which is hell itself. All of them are considered to be Maya. All illusions of perception. None of them are the authentic reality. And all of them represent the wheel of samsara, which is where reincarnation occurs, this constant getting recycled back into the system until we learn to evolve beyond it. So in Christianity, getting to heaven is sort of the goal. In Buddhism, it's sort of like not getting distracted by that, because if you die and you're going to be tempted, for example, the Tibetan Book of the Dead has all of these manifestations that occur in that halfway state between completing your life here and then entering into the realm of the dead. You are presented with all of these illusions that feel very real, and of course we gravitate towards the pleasant ones. And the Bardo Thodol says, do not do that. Do not fall into this trap, because you'll get stuck into the wheel of karma again and end up on samsara, and you never break out. It's like a trap that you never can free yourself from until you learn to face that temptation and then eventually transcend it, into which case then that person enters into what Buddhism calls nirvana, which is a state far and beyond even heaven itself. I've always wondered if the kingdom of heaven, as Christianity teaches it, is equivalent to the Buddhist heaven or the Buddhist nirvana? And I'm wondering how, if you're in your work, have you encountered this discrepancy between East and West? And if not, would you consider perhaps doing an experiment to try to answer that question?
Well, that's something I've always wondered too. And in our work, the closest I could come to that is thinking of a couple of cases where when we had somebody where normally it'll be like when a person goes to a past life, they see themselves pass away, and then I'll say, okay, turn around, what's next? And there's usually a guide or an angel or a ball of light or somebody that has just like energy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then we start communicating with whatever that is, and then they take us on this journey. But occasionally, a few people have bypassed all that. And what we think they've done, or at least feels, has gone way above that to this source of like everything but nothing. You know, in other words, they feel themselves, it's like in a soup, like in an energy soup, you know, like they're just one little drop of fluid in this ocean of something.
Yeah.
And when I asked them when they're in that, I said, well, are there other souls there? And she goes, yeah, we're all part of each other, you know.
Soul families.
Yeah, like it's just the little drop is the everything, you know. Like,
well, again, it's in the scriptures, you know, that would be all in all, to be all.
Yeah, that's
in
what
all.
it's kind of the all in all kind of like. Yeah,
because I do think that that the Holy Trinity as Christians, I nearly said understand it. We don't understand it.
No. No, we don't.
But actually, the Holy Trinity is a mystery to us. That doesn't mean to say that we can't say anything about it, of course. But I've always strongly believed that. See, post Enlightenment, we're obsessed with understanding everything. And actually, again, in 1 Corinthians 13, it actually says, if I have all knowledge but don't have love, I'm nothing.
That's nothing.
Because knowledge isn't enough. I actually believe that in the world to come, well, the Holy Trinity will still be a mystery to us. You know, I mean, it's not that heaven is a place where all of a sudden now, everything makes rational sense now.
No, I think it's a grow. I think we grow into that wisdom as time.
Category.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think we grow into it.
My take on that is, and this is just an opinion, like everybody else's opinion, but is that and the going back to this person I'm thinking of, it was in that space. I'm there facilitating, and I'm thinking, oh man, I don't want to be in soup. It would seem like I wasn't an individual. I'm thinking like that's got to be boring or something. But the client said total opposite. She said, because we went some other place, she says, no, I want to go back there. You know, so it was like in the middle of this, the feeling or the consciousness was so beautiful that was far superior than to like going to some golden wisdom temple and play, you know, going bowling or something, you know. It was like, so it got me, it was it was something for me to think about. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think maybe sometimes it's somatics. It's like we're all talking about the same kind of thing, you know, but I guess when we think heaven, we just mean someplace other than you know, Russia and America and nuclear war and stuff, you know, someplace where people are actually kind all the time, you know, where you feel love and where you pick a job that has to do with love, you know, because when people are on the other side, they don't have to come back again. There's a lot of things they can do. A lot of people go, no, I got to go back to school. I got to go back to Earth because I got to learn some stuff. But a lot of people on the other side will take jobs, you know, just helping other people, or, you know, there's no, nobody's unemployed in heaven. Hey, that's a good name for a book.
You know, your model that you've you know, what you've, and I think I might have mentioned it on the last time you were on the show, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but it sounds very familiar, the things that you've uncovered in your work, Regan. It sounds very much like the movie What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Do you find that
Yeah.
movie to be very accurate based upon what you've experienced with this work?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's in the ballpark, because people talk about some of the colors they see are more vibrant and brighter than the colors here on Earth. Like when they're in their garden up there, it's not going like to the Bouchard Gardens. It's like a heaven garden, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That way. So and the other thing people always experience too is, because one thing I'll ask their guide and everything, I'll say, well, they just had a pretty tough life and their current life is pretty tough. Do you have a place of rejuvenation they can go to get like recharged? They always say yes. And then and then immediately they're there, and I'll have my client describe what they're in. And the most common is like pools of like emerald water or waterfalls, and there's other souls, and they're just bathing in this. And then when my client is in there, I'll say, okay, I'm going to be quiet for a little while. You tell me when you're done. And then when they're done, I put it on the recording, and they usually just talk about this feeling where they can just feel like their body's made of billions of like BBs, and they can just feel this in this pool, this energy just going through their whole, and they can feel it in their human body, just cleansing and cleaning. And so it's just a beautiful experience, except one of my clients was in the middle of a desert. There was nothing but sand. And she laid down in the sand. The guide was next to her, and she's on the couch, and she's going, oh, it's kind of like grindy, kind of. But the guide just told her just to stay there, and then she felt the sand was like sifting through her body, like they have sand filters for pools, and things like sand was this cleansing kind of thing. So she laid there and she says, "Oh, okay, I'm done," But it was like that was a different kind of thing, So,
so how does this work relate to the emotional freedom technique? Let's transition into that. I'm curious to see where the relationship is. And
okay, so for people watching, if this things I'm talking about or that we all talk about here seems is kind of pushing your limit a little bit, and you go, oh, I don't know about that. There's a technique right now that this EFT, some people would just poo-poo. For years and years I did, like, oh, this is silly. This can't work, whatever. But there were a lot of people doing this work, this EFT, it stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And because we were having like a 90-something% success rate, or even better, with getting people back to normal from severe PTSD, from fears, from phobias, anxiety, depression, so it almost works on about anything, because what it is, it's a way to balance the physical body's energy so that the physical body can actually repair itself. Because we all know, you get a cut, and if you could just time lapse and just take a picture of the cut on your finger, you'd see it, go from bloody to, and in about a week, you can't even see where you were cut.
Mm-hmm.
You just think of how miraculous is that. Well, that's just showing you what the body can do on the inside also, but the reason people have sicknesses usually is because of some sort of emotional issue, because just think about it, somebody cuts you off when you're driving, and it's like,
you feel it. You feel it physically. Yes.
You tighten up, and yeah. And so when our bodies have stress, when our bodies are going through a lot of stress, what we're doing is we're tightening things up. The first thing you'll notice is it's hard to breathe, because it's like, and people that come to me that have a lot of emotional stress is they're really shallow breathers, because they're so tight. Everything is so tight in them. And so what this emotional freedom technique does, there's I'll show in a minute. I'll show you the different points, and because there's about there must be 200 videos on YouTube now about this. But as therapists were doing it. Let me backtrack to how it was discovered. This is kind of interesting. A woman was going to a therapist. She was going through a bad divorce, and she was going to this therapist. And on the third time she came, she's in the middle of telling him how horrible she feels. going through this divorce. And she gets kind of pissed at the therapist. She says, look, this is the third time that I'm coming here, and all you have me do is talk about this. And every time we start talking about it, it brings everything up again. And I just feel this pain in my stomach. And I, what's the use of coming here? Because you're just talking about it. You're making me feel horrible. The therapist happened to be studying acupuncture at the same time. And when she said, when we start talking about this, my stomach starts hurting all over. He just had an aha moment. And he knew that the meridian for the stomach is right here. Mm-hmm. So he said, okay, let's continue to talk about the issue, but I want you to take your fingers. I want you just to massage this area right under your eye. So she's talking about her issue. She's doing that. And about 10 minutes later, she goes, my stomach doesn't hurt anymore. And I don't give a hoot about my ex-husband, very soon to be. It's like...
that all of our viewers are frantically doing this now.
Yeah, they're all like going, I'm like, I'll do it on both eyes.
So that's where it started. And then so it progressed from that over about 20 to 30 years now, maybe it's been 30 years now, to this whole form of EFT. So as more therapists were doing this, and we were screaming to the psychological community, this is so cool. We'd have people, like I wrote a book called Phobias Gone in 1 Hour, in case anybody wants to buy it. About once a year, I get someone that finds it on Amazon, But it teaches people to do this EFT, and they can actually do it themselves, and they can get rid of a fear of phobia. They have about a 90% chance just by doing this EFT by themselves and doing it in a pretty regimented. Well, it's not actually. When I show all the points and everything, you could do them in any order. But usually, when I teach it, I do it from like top down because it's easy for people to remember the points.
Right.
But so we started screaming in the psychological community for years and years and years. Said no, it's just silly. Besides, we don't want people getting better in 3 sessions. We want them in there for 2 years.
Sounds like medicine today.
Is this the reason when people are being idiots, I want to bang my head against a brick wall? Is it related?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because even though therapists are good people, they're trying to help people, but you go, gosh, if I can heal somebody or get them fixed in 3 or 4 sessions, how am I going to make a living? Because they're used to people come to them for years sometimes and go over the same stuff and the same stuff and the same stuff. What happened was eventually Harvard Medical School found out about this, and they said, well, we can test that. We can test that. So what they did is they had volunteers come in, and what they did is they would take a blood sample and they would test their cortisol level. Now, the cortisol level is your stress hormone, and it's very easy to tell how much stress someone's going under by testing that, okay? And they hooked people up to machines, and they could see what the amygdala, which is the part of, I think it's in the front part of the brain right up in here, it's kind of like our fire alarm, like if, going off, like, if we're in stress and everything, it's like, danger, stress.
Snake brain.
Yeah. And so what happened during this study was they would have people do this tapping for 5 minutes to these different points, and then they took their cortisol level immediately after 5 minutes. They could not believe what they saw. They saw people's stress level reduced from 25 to 50% across the board in about 5 minutes, and people that were feeling like this all of a sudden found themselves calm. And that's what I see visibly all the time. I do this all the time with people, and I love it. Sometimes one of my clients said, "Thank you, Jesus," to me.
Yeah.
Said, "Oh, come on, it's not me. It's because it seemed like so much of a miracle." Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't know exactly how it works, but we do know that it does work. The analogy I give to most people is like, let's say you're driving your car home from work, you just had a beautiful day at work, and you're kind of daydreaming, and somebody T-bones you in an intersection, goes through a red light. And that jolt or that something, it's like a hand grenade goes off in your body, and shrapnel just goes everywhere, okay? And what'll happen is that if you don't do something to find out where that shrapnel is and bring it back home to where it was supposed to be, that shrapnel will stay there for the rest of your life. that's why, like, sometimes I deal with a lot of women that have rape and incest issues and violence to them. And they'll talk about something that happened 40, 50 years ago, and they fall apart when they talk about it because it feels to them like it happened yesterday.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what this EFT does, this is what I love to do this. As I'm working with them, I'm having talk about their issue. Like I'll put words in their mouth, but I tell them to, if the words that I'm saying aren't your true words, then you change the words and say it better in your own language. Okay. For instance, if I'm dealing with like a client I remember who's one of the richest families in America, and she was molested by her father for 7 years. Totally. When I found her, I was living in Mexico for about a year, and I happened to run into her, and she had run away from Oxford school when she was in college. She just couldn't take it anymore. She took the money that she had there and went to Mexico. And when I met her, she was living in a house with no water, no toilet, no electricity. She had like 14 dogs that she was trying to feed and save every day. She was making staffs. She would find along the river there, she would find wood and she would varnish them and sell them for a little bit. And this is from someone that, from a very, very, very wealthy family. Yeah. So I worked with her for I was only able to see her for 3 sessions. I could write a book about this woman. She was probably the most, I read about the first chapter in a book she was writing, and I went, oh my God, she was like Steinbeck or something. It was amazing. Oh, wow. And it was about her trying to smuggle some Mexicans into America by going out on the ocean and coming back. And she felt so she's trying to save everybody because she couldn't save herself, So about the third time she did this, I think we're going on a tangent, but third time she did this, she got to San Diego, just as they docked and there was helicopters and sirens and everything all over, she got arrested, went to prison, and they let her out on parole after about a year. And she was supposed to stay in America, but she didn't. She went right back down to Mexico, and that's when I kind of met her. But in her book, she was out about 4 or 5 miles out in the ocean, and as they were out there in the small boat, they thought they saw a seal or something. And as they got closer to it, they realized it was a human being that was just treading water right out in the middle.
Oh my goodness!
Oh my gosh! And it just thinking about that. So they pulled him on board and everything. They said, "What happened?" He said he was on the boat with a dozen other people, and they got notice that the Coast Guard was coming, so they threw everybody overboard, and everybody drowned but him. So that's just the crazy stuff kind of going down there. So back to her now with her issue. She had an issue she remembered, like when people have PTSD, or if they're, if they're abused over a long period of time, there's usually 1 or 2 instances that are the trigger. There are 1 or 2 that they remember, even though it's been 20, 30, 40, 50 times they were molested or raped or whatever. There's 1 or 2 that's the CD that plays, okay? Mm-hmm. So as I said, well, I wanted her to pick out one of those. And with EFT, here's what we do. I have the person close their eyes, and I tell them that their subconscious will show them how bad this PTSD is on a scale from 1 to 10. And I say, just tell your subconscious or imagine you're going to see the needle over to the left, which is 0, which means you have no trouble at all. And 10, meaning you're just going to come out of your skin, okay? So I'm quiet for a minute. And I say, also, when this goes up, and whatever it is, your subconscious will ping at whatever it is. It's just kind of cool. It'll tell you where you're at. And then I said, and then when you're at that place, tell me where you feel it in your body, because it usually shows up in a different part of the body, okay? So she would close her eyes, and she's thinking about the incident, and it's like, she said, it's hitting against the 10. And I go, okay, this is serious. This is really, really bad, Mm-hmm. So this is, pretend it's, usually the first time we do this, I like to do the tapping for my client as long as they're okay with touch. With therapists, we always have to ask, are you okay with me doing this for you? Right. Because I don't want them to have to be thinking, okay, is this the right place? How many times do I do it? So just to show them how it works. So I'll take their hand, and this is the karate chop point right here, we call it. And I don't know exactly, an acupuncturist could probably tell exactly, where the right point is, but I just
called your knife hand, and the
knife
points
hand.
Points are right here.
Yeah. So I just use 2 or 3 fingers, And you don't want to hit it, you don't want to bruise yourself, but then you don't want to go, oh, hello. It's more like, just to disturb it. Yeah. So as I'm doing this to her, tapping, I would have her say something like, even though my father molested me when I was 7 years old and it's ruined my life, I love and accept myself. And then here, even though my father ruined my life, even I hate my father, even though, oh my God, even though I can't stand that man, even though he hurt me and he did this and he touched me where I wasn't supposed to, I love and accept myself. And she was I learned something very, very good from her at the time, because she was taught to be a debutante in the rich society. You don't say it, you got to make sure, you got to kind of show that everything's always good when it's not, put the big face on. And so she started saying, she says, even though I really dislike my father, because he molested me, I'd love and accept myself, even though I don't like my dad. And we weren't getting anywhere. I would have her close her eyes. She was still at a 10. Okay. So then I remembered what I learned in college, that it's that she wasn't talking about her true feelings. So what I tell my clients is when they feel comfortable with me, they'll do this. Like people, there's a lot of people that you can't get them to say the F word or the S word or the B word.
No problem here.
Yeah, right.
We had a whole discussion about that in the first segment.
Right. But some people it was so ingrained in her, that's impolite. You don't say that. But see, she wasn't expressing her true feelings, so we weren't getting anywhere. Yeah. So then when I kind of said, look, you got to just say it in your own words. Okay. I mean, how do you really feel? Oh my gosh. So this then as she's tapping, it's like, even though I hate the word hate, even though I hate that MFer, oh my God, I would cut his off, if I saw, screaming, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Okay.
Now you're getting somewhere.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I saw her. She went from a 10 down to an 8, down to a 6. And then I worked with her for about an hour and we got down to about a 5. And then on the second session, we got it down to about a 2, 2.5, and it stayed at around a 1 or 2 on the third session. And then I didn't see her after that, but I did see her about 6 months later. She came up to me and I said, how are you doing on that? And she says, oh, I can think about that now. And I don't fall apart. She says, I still hate the bastard, but because I told her, I said, that's where the real healing comes in, is once you can forgive. Because some people, they'll get down to a 2 or 3 or 4. And if it doesn't go below that, I know that we have to work on that thing of forgiveness. Okay. Because once they do that, then they're free, but they can get rid of that.
Well, I mean, it's impossible. Craziness. It's impossible to really forgive as long as you're still in the midst of the emotional turmoil, because you're still living the trauma. So how can you forgive when you're still being tortured by it? You're still having to live with it. It's impossible to forgive that. I mean, you can overlook it, but it just becomes suppression. And that's where this technique, I see from what you're telling me, this is the real magic of it, is that it's about catharsis and it's about authenticity. And these are the two things that are needed to overcome all sorts of fear reactions and trauma reactions. So this is making good sense.
That's right, because forgiveness is the last part of the puzzle. It's the last piece to come. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I like the way you describe that.
Yeah, imagine those emotions fester inside you. You have to release them somehow. This reminds me a lot of Qigong, which predates yoga, Chinese martial art. And I was taught it through my acupuncturist. And while I wasn't using it for PTSD, I was using it for traumatic injury and pain. And through it, we call it tapping, the Qigong.
Right, yeah.
And after a month or so, I was able to control my pain, or when I was having a bad pain day, I would just start the routine. And there are, what you're doing is you're redirecting your chi, and it works. So it's very, very similar to Qigong.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Pressure.
Like I've had people come to me with fears and phobias. Like when I was going through college, I was an actor in Hollywood, and I was a SAG Screen Actors Guild. I was at a party. And there was a girl there that was talking, and she was talking to her friend about having to fly to London for an audition the next day. But she says, I can't do it. She says, I can't. She says, if I get on a plane, I'd lose it. What am I going to do? So I introduced myself. We're in the middle of this big party. And I said, look, I've just learned something. that I might be able to help you with. She was open to anything. So in the middle of everybody going around, people drinking, I just sat with her on the couch, and I just had her do, it's like, okay, even though I'm afraid of flying, even though I'm afraid of flying, I'm afraid if I go on the plane, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to scream. I can't stand it. I'm going to, I love and accept myself, even though I went through the whole thing here. So she gets over to London the next day, and she called me on the phone screaming. She says, "What the F did you do?" She says, "I was on the plane, and usually when I've flown, I panic so much they seat me in the back so I don't scare people." She said that's happened to her because when she was 6 years old, the first plane she ever went on had a big turbulence like this, and her mom grabbed her and said, "We're going to die. We're going to die."
Geez.
So
How helpful.
Yeah, right.
Really. Thanks, Mom.
So anyway, she said that the thing was, the lady next to her was starting to have a panic attack. She took the lady's hand, she starts tapping on her, and the lady calmed down. She says, "Oh my God, I've helped somebody else, just like me." So maybe it was beautiful.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
Way. We know that it works. I mean, I watch it time after time after time after time after time. And of course, the more severe that a person's issue is, the more dramatic the healing is. If somebody's got, my mother, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, your mother-in-law's coming over, where are you? Some people would be at a 10, but usually it's like 4, 5, or 6. So if we tap and we get it down from a 6 to a 5 or 4 or 3, it's not as dramatic, but they can feel the difference and so forth. When I learned to do it in Hollywood was, I was going through college and I learned this. And so I would go on, my agent would send me on auditions. And anytime I was in a movie, I always did good. I never let the director down. Whatever part I had, I did really well. But auditions, I had a little bit of audition anxiety, going in there. So sometimes I'd walk out of an audition and I'd feel so awful. I'd go, I fucking blew it. Like, oh my God, they threw me a curve in there and I couldn't change. And I went, I just hate it. So I started doing the tapping before I went out. I'd be in my car and I'd say, even though I blew that audition a few weeks ago and made me sick to my stomach, and I hated myself for that, you stupid jerk, I love and accept myself.
I love and accept myself.
I love and accept myself. And this is where I watch the healing happen. People come out with their, I hate this. I want to kill my boss. And then they kind of go to their higher self and say, even though I feel like killing my boss, I love and accept myself. It's this moment. It's like going to confession, Father. It's kind of like that feeling, like even though they're confessing it or something, when they take a moment to kind of get to their better self and to if Jesus was next to them or something, then they say, even though I have hatred in my heart right now, it's okay. I love.
I think, like you said, it's deeply tied to forgiveness.
Yes, because you're forgiving yourself.
Well, exactly, because love and accept myself means I forgive myself, because that's what it really means. I think the greatest lie that was ever told was forgive and forget. I've mentioned it before on the show, because it's so damaging that people think that you've not forgiven someone unless you've forgotten about it. Well, that's just rubbish. If you can forget about it, it's meaningless. It's something that doesn't matter. If you can forget about it, it's a triviality that shouldn't even preoccupy you. Actually, forgiveness is for things you can't forget. Forgiveness is for things that can't be mended or put right. Yeah. If I crash into your car and you're not in it, I can put it right by getting it fixed at a shop. There's not really a big problem with that, and it's just kind of a funny story to tell, and whenever you want to tell it. If you're in it and it disables you, well, that can't be put right. I can't give you a new spine. And so that's when forgiveness really matters. And of course, the greatest, the forgiveness matters the most for us. People who've damaged me might not give a damn that they've damaged me. Likely don't. It's me who it chews up. It's me who's bitter and twisted and, has all those kind of stress side effects as a result of not being able to forgive. So, it strikes me that forgiveness is at the heart of your ministry. So I think it is like confession in that regard.
You would be maybe not surprised, but I am surprised if I tell people that I go through this and I haven't told them there's going to be a sentence where they say, I love and accept myself. Oof, so many times we get to that point, and then I say, even though I have this, I love and accept myself. And they're like, even though I
It's very hard to say.
Oh,
Yeah.
and some people will.
I wouldn't want to say it.
I wouldn't want to say it either. No, it'd be hard.
Okay.
That's not questioning its value.
Yeah.
I'm not questioning its value. I'm just saying I would find that hard.
But it really, it surprised me just how some people, and it brings so much emotion. You can tell that they have so much self-hatred.
Well, I think
We're our
so
own
much
worst critics, so it's hard for us to give ourselves for something that seems so self-serving to do so.
But I can hide behind so many things to say why I won't say that. I can say, I'm British. We just, it's an American thing to do. Like, we just don't, Well, actually, it is all just shielding from, making a courageous step, actually.
Okay, now I'll tell you something embarrassing here, but actually, I'm so proud that I did it, because I learned this exercise from, trying to think who it was, and it was somebody at a Christian men's retreat or something like this, and it was about that, God, says, love thyself, of course, is the big thing. That's the big thing. And I always tell my regular clients, I says, look, it's just kind of been proven that you can't really love other people any more than you love yourself. So that's a motivation for you to love yourself more, because then the more you love yourself, the more love you can give to other people. But there's an exercise, and it actually works. So, Father Chris, what I want you to do
There it comes.
is, okay, nobody's around. Just say, okay, just go in the bathroom, wherever you have a big mirror or something. The best way to do it is just be naked, stand there in front, just your own naked self, because that makes you vulnerable to begin with, the nakedness. And I tell people, don't go, nobody's around, just go in there. And I says, it may be hard at first, but try to look just like you're looking at another person in there. It's you that you're seeing. And look yourself in the eye as much as you can and just say, I love you. I really, really love you, and then you start saying, you know what, there was that thing you did today, and you kind of turned the other cheek, or, that you could have been mad or something you didn't. I'm proud of you for that. That's showing that you're doing good. I'm getting to love you more all the time. You're a good person, even though you have a hard time saying. Just kind of have this conversation like you're talking to another person, but it's yourself. Now, here's the thing. Your subconscious is seeing you see somebody and tell them that you love them. And it's seeing you because it's seeing that picture of that other person. So your subconscious goes, oh, I thought we hated that guy.
I get it. I mean, it kind of mirrors that, because one of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life is, I can't remember exactly, something like treat yourself as somebody as though you're interested in helping. It's kind of a similar, and I reflect on myself. There are things that I absolutely know to be true in terms of grace and forgiveness and how God views people and all the rest of it, which I will tell people because I truly believe it, and I will tell people till I'm blue in the face, are metaphysical realities, that their sins are put away, that actually the thing that they have been holding on to for 60 years in some cases is now, as far as the east is from the west, that's as far as the way it's been put away from God, and it's never to be repeated again in the confessional. It's dealt with, and I believe that for everyone except myself.
Yeah. It's funny when it's ourselves.
But it's actually hubris. It's ego. It's a real sin.
Well, let's take a break right here, so Father Chris has a chance to go get naked in the mirror, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final segment of Vestiges After Dark. We're talking with Regan Forston about the emotional freedom technique, and I think Father Chris has his clothes back on. Will let us know how it worked. Sure, it worked well. And we'll be taking your questions here. Feel free to call into the show if you have a question for our guests or any one of us tonight. That's 347-514-7150. That's 347-514-7150. Enter PIN number 3768923 to get into the queue. That's 3768923. We'll take you on the air. And we'll also take questions from the chat room. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't leave us. Once again, that number to call is 347-514-7150. That's 347-514-7150. And the PIN number is 3768923. I went ahead and put that number up on the screen so that all of you have easy access to it if you get the itch to call us. But I know most of you prefer asking questions from the chat room. That's okay. We can definitely keep our eyes open for those questions coming in. So if there is anything that you have in mind or any questions about what you've heard so far tonight, let us know and we will ask our guests and find out more about the subject. So, Father Chris, did it work?
as if I'd be able to conquer my ego and pride that quickly.
Oh, I don't know. You're monumental with your dedication, so I think it's possible.
What I was reflecting on though, and something I'd be interested in asking Regan is, as you can see, it's tomorrow here, and today's Ash Wednesday, and so in the life of the church, we and we'll be having mass this evening, where we literally put ashes on our head and are told, "Remember, man, thou art dust, and to dust thou shalt return." In other words, we confront ourselves with our mortality, something that doesn't happen enough in the Western world now, because we have much larger life expectancies. We've more than doubled it in 100 years. And so, although people do die and suffer, it's a bit far removed. I thought COVID might break through that, but actually, it wasn't as severe a pandemic as people feared it might be. Although it was still tragic. But so I just want to, as Christians, what that inspires us to do is to examine ourselves. Well, actually, we're going to die one day, and so how are we living? That's really the point of Ash Wednesday. Right. Memento mori. So remember you're going to die, and that we then enter into a period of Lent, which people associate with giving up chocolate. It's so trite, It's supposed to be a period of self-examination, and of alms to the poor, and of it's preparation for in a sense, the joy that comes with the resurrection life at Easter. So I wondered what, because these are so connected to what you do, in terms of, therapy for people to deal with tough things in a way to confront difficult things in life. But also, the whole near-death thing about exploring, what's beyond this mortal life. So I wondered what you do to help people prepare for that. Not just the actual session itself, which I think you've explained pretty well, but what's the sort of, I don't know, what are the primers you give people like for?
Well, yeah, having a session is just about like putting ashes on your forehead, because when they have a session, the biggest thing of everything they find out is that they're not an accident, that they're here for a reason, and that they are loved and they have a mission and there's something they want to learn here. So that in itself, it's like an Ash Wednesday. It's like the big wake up call, like, whoa, I better, instead of being in the rat race and not paying any attention to just getting up, going to work, boom, coming home and being in kind of hypnotic trance. I think COVID has kind of shook people out of a trance, really, and made them start to look at their life and made them look like, oh, geez, what am I doing? Look how many people have quit their jobs that they were and decided, I'm not doing that crap job anymore. I'm going to do something I want to do. I mean, that's one of the up things of COVID. It's made people, a lot of people have been to a lot of funerals and they've lost a lot of loved ones, and it's made them think about their own mortality and like, oh my gosh, I'm like me, I'm in my 70s and I go, oh man, it could be next week I go, or maybe I'll be one of those guys who lives to be 100. I don't know. But it makes you think about that every day, that you got to make the most of it. So I wish when I was growing up and we put the ashes on the head, that just what you said, Father Chris, I wish they would have explained that to me. But all we did was we did that and they'll give up chocolate, it's like, just give up something,
There's a reason that the church has declined in the West.
Yeah.
These things have not been explained well.
No, they didn't, like the Stations of the Cross. All I remember is it stunk like hell in there with the stuff they're burning,
It's not like heaven.
Yeah. So, but they never
like something else.
They never. That was the failing. The failing of me growing up where the church was in America or then is that the rituals. They never explained the meaning behind the rituals to get to the real point to why you have the rituals, and it was just you just do it, whatever. So, I think that they could use, I don't know, I haven't been, like I'd say, to a mass in quite a while, but it would be nice to be into a church where they actually explain all that. And you go, oh, that's why, like I went to...
I know a guy.
I go to one that knows.
Yeah. I went to a Jewish service with a good friend of mine who is there, and they were talking about the 400 and something things that are in the Bible that you're not supposed to do. Growing up, I just thought, oh, that's so silly. They got 400 things. They got to do this. They got to wash their hands. They got to do. When I got into it, and I went, oh, okay. I guess when you get up in the morning, it's good to get in, and before you touch your face and before thing, you wash your hands. Because of stuff that on the night. It's like, well, that's common sense. And most of those 400 things are just common sense things to do that makes your life healthier. So I got a different viewpoint. People
always remember the prohibitions, don't they? I mean, there's 613 commandments in the Old Testament. A lot of which only apply to priests, Old Testament priests, and or women. Of course, women end up with the biggest burden. Funny that. But the people always forget the positive ones. Even with the 10 commandments, they all know the 7 don'ts. Yeah. But they forget the 3 do's. So
okay, what are they?
Worship the Lord your God.
I had them all memorized. I did have it memorized as a child. Yeah, worship. Yeah, God.
There are 3 positive ones and there are 7 negative ones. The first 3 are about worshiping God.
Yeah.
The 7 are about communal life, really. As a reflection of the goodness of God.
Well, this is kind of in line with one of the questions coming in from the chat right now from Valak. Valak asks, do you think COVID, Black Lives Matter movements, and the Ukrainian situation, etc., has turned people towards religion or turned them away? So I guess let's ask what do you all think on this? Do you think it's turned them towards or away?
Probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, I would say both.
Both. Father Chris, what do you think?
I think it's turned people towards it, actually.
You do?
Yeah. It depends how you define religion, I guess. But I think it's turned people towards God, because I think even pausing for a moment to consider our mortality is a turn towards God.
That's a good thing, yeah.
But a lot of people pray in the last 2 years that haven't prayed in a long time.
Yeah.
There's no atheists in foxholes, you know?
You got that right.
Yeah. I think it's more, if you go percentage-wise, it's a lot more bring them closer to God. It's just when when you get into the politics part of it and the nitpicking kind of little stuff,
turn you away real quick.
Yeah, kind of brings it down. But I think it has kind of it has me, as much as spirituals I think I am and stuff like that. I've spent more time that way, especially when I've had clients come to me that lost people to COVID, and I've had a few of them have conversations with their loved ones on the other side. And that's a beautiful thing to watch, and just for them knowing that their mom, their dad, like one of my clients, 36 years old, she was a therapist at a prison, and you would look at her and you would go, there's no way in the world that she's a therapist at a prison. Real dainty, real sweet, and just a beautiful personality. And here she is in this hardcore prison, and she was engaged to be married, and her 38-year-old fiance died of COVID. Left her with a child, and it just, you just don't think at 38 you got your whole life in front. Finally found the man of her dreams, and then he's just taken away. So on the other side, though, he told her it was just his turn to go. Says, don't worry about it. And he says, now you got to take care of our child, and you got to find a father for her, because she could really use a father, so don't think you can't go dating and find someone. And now she's actually found a better job. She's dating somebody right now, and she says, I still miss him like heck, but I'm just okay. I know this is just how things are supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, good question.
That's good healing there.
Our ancestors were so much better at dealing with this stuff, because they confronted it more regularly.
Well, they did.
They lived 30 years.
Well, 38 would have been old back then.
I mean, a lot of it had to do with life expectancy, but I think a lot of it also had to do with just less distraction too. Now it's easier to forget about your mortality, because you can lose yourself in any number of activities like television or movies or video games, or there's so many drugs. I mean, let's face it. I mean, there's all sorts of ways people can use to create little escapisms from having to face the authenticity of their mortality. And then when you combine that with the fact that, well, I mean, for most people, when you're 20 years old, 80, 90 years old feels like a long way away.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not really thinking like, oh, well, I mean, death is like, that's something that's going to happen in this unimaginable distance into the future. But the reality is, you wake up one day and you're 50, you wake up one day and then you're 60. It goes by, only looking forward does it seem like a long distance. And I think, part of that is a deficiency in our spirituality. And I do think religion has been deficient in teaching authentic spirituality. Like you said, Regan, I think you really hit the nail on the head that, we have all these beautiful rituals and everything, but if they're not being explained, then, nobody's going to be able to connect with them. If you're just being told, well, you just do this to do it, then you're not really doing it, are you? You're just going through the motions. It's just acting at that point.
Even if, because I mean, you're partly murder to dissect. Rituals work because they are rituals. But I think even if implicitly, the people involved in that ritual understand what it is and what they're doing, that actually comes through. I think when it literally becomes a work, oh well, let's drag out the box of ashes from last year. This is what we do on this day. Kind of just following it in a cold rubrical way of doing it. That's when it ceases to have any, because it doesn't have authenticity. Mm-hmm. It is literally, and that's where the Protestants are all going. See, you Catholics are finally understanding what we're saying about works, but if that's what it is, then actually Protestants are right. It becomes a work, and therefore it's worthless. Actually,
well, it's the combination.
It
really is.
To faith, that's what makes it worthwhile.
Yes,
that's what gives it. Well, that's where the Holy Spirit works through those things.
Well, because think about it from baptism. Okay, you can baptize a baby. The godparents can stand in as the means of intent. And then as that child grows, it's understood in the teachings of the church and the doctrines of the church that those godparents are to educate that child, to guide that child in the faith, so that when the child comes of age, then they can move forward in their spirituality within the church and then take confirmation and become a mature Christian. Unfortunately, that's not happening. I mean, people are being chosen as godparents because they want to honor somebody, not because they are spiritually capable of guiding the child. No one even thinks like that anymore.
Because people can't find anybody, even if they wanted to.
Well, that's true.
They want their friends, their family. Honestly, I was so liberal, I suppose. I used to say, well, look, they've got to be baptized, and that seemed to be like, oh, really? Like, oh, what? I really want this person, but they're not baptized. And then I was even more liberal. I'd say, well, that's okay. I'll baptize them. Bring them to me. They can come to the Christian faith. They can be baptized. Then they can be their godparents. Mm-hmm. Now, actually, a few people did take me up on that.
Oh, really? That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I baptized more parents and godparents, actually. That was a lot of my baptisms because, I used to insist on it. Whereas actually, even more liberal people would say, well, they wouldn't even ask the question. They'd
right.
Just let it happen through the ritual. Well, yeah. I'd like to think that at least, because I believe that sacraments are efficacious in and of themselves.
Well, yes, and that's what I'm saying is that, yes, it is, and I didn't really finish what I was going with that.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I mean, I'm saying that, yes, you want this ideally, but if you were to just baptize a baby, get some schmuck to stand in as the godparents that they do absolutely nothing, and then that's it. They don't do anything to cultivate that faith in that child's life. That baptism just becomes dormant. Yes, there's grace there. The power was not from any of the actions of man, but if the person never actually understands that grace enough to utilize it, it's almost pointless because they will not be able to develop that grace into something that is truly meaningful in context to the plan of salvation. So I think
the way I used to explain it to persuade people was I'd say, well, look, you're making a contract, and you wouldn't expect me to get someone to sign a contract without reading it. And so, and so a godparent, a sponsor, more so than the parents actually don't have to be baptized, but the godparents do, because what they're actually making a verbal contract with God. Mm-hmm. Now they might not think much of that, but God does, the church does, and so many people are misled actually. Just stand there and say that. And I think it's because a lot of people in the church don't really believe it anymore. Like they don't think that these things are important, and they are, and they've got no business being in the church, or having any ministry in the church if they're going to play down the need for godparents to actually mean what they're saying.
It's a sad state, but I think it really permeates into the overall spiritual illness of our species at this point.
And ignorance.
And ignorance. So, I mean, I think it's kind of comforting to hear, Regan talk about the experiences that he's had, because I think I've always felt, and I say this very cautiously because as a bishop, I have to be a little bit careful spiritually when I talk about things like this. I don't want to give the misperception that I'm saying something that I'm not. I do think, these things are essential to salvation. And I do feel that the teachings of the church are true and correct. However, I also feel that the grace of God is beyond us. And I think we can't box it into our expectations for what we think this might be or what we think this might mean. And I feel that I've always felt that there's more opportunity than what we might teach in terms of this is your life and this is it. Huh? What was that?
Let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Otherwise, it's limited to my intellect, and surely not.
Well, there used to be.
This is Karl Rahner's point, though, wasn't it? This was Karl Rahner's point.
Yes.
About the so-called anonymous Christian, the doctrine of the anonymous Christian.
Yes.
That is to say that actually all men are orientated towards goodness, and that orientation towards goodness is the work of the Holy Spirit, because only God is good. And therefore, all men who are cooperating with goodness are in fact cooperating with God, with Christ. I mean, and therefore, they're Christians without knowing it. And that can be pushed too far. We know, it can both sound imperious and what have you. But yeah, the basic point, which is to say that God is beyond the church, is irrefutably true.
And it shouldn't be. I mean, it shouldn't be taught as an excuse to circumvent the process. But I think it does give us at least some comfort to know that. I think it was Mother Angelica on EWTN that used to say she doesn't know what happens, but she's very confident that when you die, God's not done with you yet. That's what she used to say. A question for Regan from Kiki in the chat room. She writes, since he does this research, did he have personal experiences like seeing spirits or other supernatural experiences during his research that he can't explain or even at home? So that's for you, Regan. Have you had anything like that happen? Well,
when I was there myself, when a facilitator helped me do that the very first time, there was we did that in the other show, a lot of the things I did, but I'll just tell her one of the biggest things that happened, the thing that I remember the most, and I forget if I talked about it on the show about being I was coming back from heaven and I was looking down at the earth. I had a guide next to me, and then all of a sudden I wasn't there. I was standing on a cliff, high on a cliff, and I was fearful for my life. I was standing on a cliff and I knew something, to back it up a bit. About 40 years ago, I went to sleep. I woke up in a dream where I realized I was dreaming, and it was like I knew I was sleeping, but I knew it was like one of these dreams.
Like a lucid dream. A lucid dream.
Yeah. A lucid dream, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the plane had crashed. I was a survivor. All of a sudden, there was this evil that was coming. And so that whatever survivors we had, we ran up this mountain. This evil was chasing us. And it was like, you can't, in the dreams, you can't get away. I finally got to the edge of this cliff, and I knew there was nothing I could do. I'm toast. This evil's going to devour me. And just at that point, I saw this beautiful white hand come up out of the clouds, and I knew instinctively that I could jump to it to safety. But then I realized, wait a minute, I have a choice to make here. Do I jump to the hand to safety, or do I turn around and face this monster? And I decided I'm going to face it. And just as I start to turn around, I woke up. And I shook my wife awake. I went, oh my God, this was something. I never remembered a dream before. This is my first dream I even remember. And I said, I think I just passed some sort of spiritual test about facing
talking
my
to the
fears.
Archetypes.
Yeah, archetypes, right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that was it. Okay, so now fast forward to a few years ago, 40-something years after I had that dream, I'm coming back from heaven, and all of a sudden I'm on that cliff, and it's like somebody undid the pause button from that dream, just as I'm turning around to face the fear. And my facilitator, I said, oh my God, I'm at this cliff again. And I know this thing's behind me. I can feel the fear. And I got a choice to make here. Do I jump to the hand to safety, or do I turn around and face the fear? And my facilitator says, well, jump to the hand to safety. And I said, F no. That was funny. They forgive me up there. Yeah. I said, I'm going to turn around. I turned around, and 2 inches from my nose was this guy smiling at me. And he hugged me, and he said, "I forgive you." And then I looked to the side of him, and all the way down this mountain, there must have been 200 people lined up to come to me face to face, to hug me and to forgive me for stuff that I'd done in previous lives or whatever it was. So I stood there on the cliff, and I was on the couch. Regan part is I'm in trance. I'm just tears running down my eyes. I've never felt so much love and forgiveness in my life. The last one there was a little girl with long brown hair down to her waist. And she came up to about here on me, maybe 9 or 10 years old. She gave me the sweetest hug and just whispered, "I love you and I forgive you."
Aww.
Oh, and then my Regan self that's there started crying, like, what the heck did I ever do to her? Because I know I'm not that person that I was probably when I did something that way.
Right.
So then all of a sudden I'm back with my guide looking down at the earth, and, shortly later I was back. But I will never forgive that, because I felt like, and that happened just after I made the commitment to do this kind of work, because I was told that if I didn't watch how I did this kind of work, my physical body will get sick and die, because you're handling so much spiritual energy, whether it's positive, whatever. Your body can only handle so much, And he told me 4 things to do. He says, if you're going to do this work, you got to be in nature more. You got to do a prayer or spiritual exercise every day as you wake up, because you want to connect yourself to God. And the prayer I got in my head was, "Bless this day and those I serve, as I keep 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot planted firmly on earth to accomplish my mission of being kind at any cost." And I heard that and I remembered it, and I forget sometimes, but most of the time I do that. The other thing was to do random acts of kindness, and to ask other therapists about how do they center themselves, how do they keep themselves from going crazy, A lot of priests sometimes have emotional issues because all their prisoners are coming to them, and they got to hear all kinds of problems. And and when you're an empathetic person, it's
toxic. It can be toxic.
Yeah.
Right. You guys do that. People come to you for that. Your counselors just like me. So, I was shown an image in my mind of an hourglass. And as I was seeing clients, sand was piling up, but nothing was going through to the bottom. And so when I saw myself doing a random act of kindness in my mind, I saw sand going down to the bottom. When I saw myself in nature, sand going down. So I've been trying to do those 4 things as much as I can, and it's kind of kept me kind of sane. So to answer that person's questions, that was that. But things don't always happen that way. God works miracles in so many ways. And I'll tell you what happened to me this last weekend. I'm on a plane for the first time ever. When my wife and I have traveled, she forgot to do the seat assignment, so we didn't sit together. So,
oh no,
she was probably happy about that.
Oh, really?
Maybe she did that on purpose. But anyway, so she's a couple rows up. I'm there. I said, fine. And you always wonder who you're going to sit next to. Blah, blah, blah. A young man sits down with me, really nice young man from San Francisco. We started a conversation. He was going to see his brother for his 40th birthday party. He says, I can't miss that. His brother's turning 40. They're going to have a big party somewhere in Austin, Texas. Okay. So I get off but then he asked what I did. So I started talking about this. We started talking about God. It was just, anytime you're with someone and it just conversation comes up and they ask what you do, like, sister or father or bishop, you have a little bit of a conversation about God and something good happens. You just walk away feeling like, wow, that made this whole day meaningful. Instead of sitting on the plane, not saying a word to somebody, nothing, you interact. So get off the plane, get an Uber. We go to the Airbnb. We're trying to figure out what to do. We didn't rent a car. We said, hey, let's just walk into Austin. It's a couple of miles. We'll get a couple miles there and back. We'll get our exercise. It was 38 degrees outside Austin, Texas. So we bundled up, we walk in, we're freezing. We're going up and down. There's so many restaurants.
Oh, sorry, you meant Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
You'd be cooking out there in Australia,
I was
wouldn't you?
going to say, get not here too.
But
We Fahrenheit over here.
yeah, the week before it was 80 something, and it got down to at nighttime. It got down to below freezing. So anyway, we're cold. We don't know what to do. And finally, my wife just says, "Oh, let's just go here." So we go in there, and it's called Bangers, and it's sausage place. You know, they have all kinds of different sausage bangers. And I was from, I guess that's the term in England, right? Or, you know, from that. Okay. So
Bangers and mash.
Bangers and mash, right? So you just go in this place, and there's a table, and you just share it, just a long table. You sit there, people sit next to you, whatever. So we're sitting there, trying to figure. We finally get something to order. There's a group, about 4 guys come in, and they're sitting right next to us, and the person waiting on us drew a line, says, "Okay, this is their side. This is your side." You know, okay, fine. You know, so there was an empty space between me, and then there was 2, and then there was 3 on the other side. So we're sitting there eating or something like this, and all of a sudden my wife looks at the guy who just sat down next to me there. It was the guy that I sat next to on the airplane.
That's weird.
Yes. In other words, not only it wasn't that it would be now. What wouldn't be weird if I saw him in a shopping mall, or I saw him somewhere, I saw him on the street or something. But God, we had that conversation about God on the plane, and I told him what I did, and we started having this conversation about God. And then, you know, 3 hours, 4 hours later, whatever it is, here he is, fine, not only at the same restaurant, but sitting right next to me on the same table. In that, so he looked at me or something. He goes, "Oh my God, I'm going to give you a call." You know, I said, yeah. I said, I got goosebumps. You know, I said, okay, I don't know what this is for. I said, it may be just as simple. Oh, and then his brother was turning 40. I put my hand on him and I said, you know what? 40 to 50 is better than 30 to 40, and 50 to 60 is even better. And I'm in my 70s. This is even better. And he looks at me like in disbelief, you know, like, are you sure? I thought,
Are you sure?
I thought it was all done, you know?
Yeah.
And I said, that's because the older you get, the more streetwise you are, the more you've been knocked around by things, the more things you've solved, the more now you're deciding what you really want to do in life and what's really valuable. And
the less surprised you are by evil, you know, like, do you know what I mean? Like, because it's evil things that really derail people. You know, there are malevolent people in the world who, you know, the school bullies don't stop being bullies when they leave school. You know, it's kind of, there are malevolent people. But I think as you get older and you confront more of that, you're not less, you're more aware of it in many ways, but you know that you'll survive it.
Yeah, it doesn't bother you as much.
Doesn't bother you as much.
Yeah.
Regan, have you seen
miracles?
Have you ever seen a ghost in your waking life? You know, have you ever had a paranormal experience in your waking life, like a haunted house experience or anything like that?
I never have. I mean, I had the feeling one time as I was waking up, it felt like somebody was pushing on my chest and pushing me back, that I couldn't get up, and it scared me because it actually could feel a pressure on my chest. I don't know what that was about, but that, you know, could have been what they call waking paralysis or something.
Sleep paralysis. Yeah.
You know, but I know people that have, or there's all these shows now where they're doing these ghost hunters. The way we explained it in our research is that these are, you know, there's no time and space on the other side. Heaven has no time and space. So these souls that haven't gone, you know, in our thing, you know, here's a ghost that's hanging around or something. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know what it could be sometimes. It's just, you know, souls that are just hanging around, and they just, they're not ready to go to the other side yet, or they haven't really woken up in that state yet enough. And the guides on the other side, they're patient as heck, you know, it's okay, whenever it gets around to it, you know, kind of thing. But that's have you guys had guests on your show in the paranormal that way about that hunt for ghosts and do all these things like on the ghost shows?
We kind of are that. We're sort of the exorcist team for the Ghost Adventure show on Travel Channel. So yeah, we know we're very much a part of that world by proxy. Yeah. So yeah, we know.
Regan, we were talking about the Enneagram last week, and I wondered if you had an. Yeah, I thought that you might know something
Enneagrams.
About that,
what do you think of the Enneagrams?
I Because what I do,
I did it as part of seminary training, just to give you a background. But
yeah,
I'd be really interested in how you see the Enneagram fitting in with your work. We all want to know what number you are as well.
And by the way, we're 2 8s and a 1, I believe.
I'm a 1. Right? They're 2 8s.
Yeah.
You guys are like Mary. You're an 8.
Yeah.
Okay, and what's your wing?
I don't know that.
Okay, that's important.
7.
Okay.
My wing's 7.
Yeah, your wings are an 8 with the 7. Okay. So
we're both ex cops. So.
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. No nonsense. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
8s. Now 8s are the protector.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Oh, here's what, now the Enneagram, according to going back into history, it was a Catholic bishop or priest or something that kind of brought this out way, when I read the beginnings of it or something. I have a relative who's Pentecostal or something, and because it was Catholic, they said, nah, it's probably no good then, they just thought because, whatever. But,
I think it was a Catholic priest that brought it out, but it originated in Sufism, in mystical Islam.
Yeah. It's a little sketchy, but where it came from exactly. But the thing is, I know that it's actually really works a lot. It's good. Like I have my clients take the test a lot of time before I see them for the first time, because once I know what their number is, I'll know probably a lot about what they're facing and their problems.
Yeah, so you can kind of tweak your how you speak to them and how you lead them.
I just went back to look at my report because I did not look at the wing last time. So I'm a 1. I'm a 1 with a 5. I'm a 1 with a 5.
Well, now the wing is either like did you say your main number's a 2?
My main number is 1, and the wing is 5.
Well, okay. Now the wing is usually on either side of you, meaning if you're 1, it's either a 2 or what comes before 1 is the 9. If you go back, so your wing would be it's 2 different personalities.
So it'd be either 9. Okay, I guess maybe I'm reading this wrong then.
You're looking at the direction from 1 to 5. Yeah. That's not the wing. That's the what do they call that? That's the it's kind of, if you're in a good place, you go to this place, and if you're in a bad place, you go to
this report's not calling any of this a wing. They're just showing that.
No, but the wings are literally just either side. So
okay. So how do I figure out which one it is if I'm a 1?
Here's a website that works real good. It's called eclecticenergies.com. eclecticenergies.com, and they'll have you take 2 tests. One will tell you your main number and the other will be your wing, because it's 2 different personalities.
Okay.
Hey, people in the chat room, that's your homework assignment for next week.
Yeah.
I guess we're not going to be done with these Enneagrams.
Sorry.
Father Chris, here's a good thing. If you're doing some counseling for a couple getting married, you can have a lot of fun with this. You have to, you say if they're coming to you for counseling, have them take that test, and that will, that'll cut off so many problems that they have in the beginning of their marriage. Because what we need to realize is that God seems to have created, at least what we've identified so far, 9 different softwares. And we all, the problem we have as people is we always think everybody should think just like we do. Everybody should solve problems just like we do. Everybody should think like what we do, but that's not the case. So when I used to go to some of the classes, the teacher would get one of each 9 up on a panel, and then she would describe a problem, and a life's problem would happen. And I swear you thought you were in a comedy club. I mean, when you see how a 1 would deal with the situation as to a 2 and a 3, it was hilarious, because people were they go, I can't believe that's the way they look at it. That's so stupid, and then, but so when you can realize that when you get to marry to someone that they may not be the same as you, then when they do something different than you do, it gives you a moment to think, oh, okay, maybe that's because they're a little different, rather than they disrespect me, or they, or whatever. So it's just a good way of people getting to know, and then you get to where, like, let's say you have an 8 and a 2 in a marriage. It's a different kind of marriage than a 3 with a 4 or whatever, that way. Like I'm a 9, I'm a peacemaker, and I have a 1 wing, and people that are 1s bug me.
Well, you get along with our one.
No, it's because, well, but that's, it's probably something to do with me, you know, something, but my one self is really rooting for the underdog all the time. You know, one's root for the underdog. They want things to be, they want justice, you know, this should be this way, this should be fair, you know, and everything like this. Sevens, you know, sevens are the adventurer. You know, when you have a 7 in you, that's that part of you that keeps wanting to see what's on the other side of the next hill, you know, and they're really good about coming up with ideas, coming up with plans, getting excited about things, but they don't follow through a lot of the time because they get bored and they want to go on to the next exciting thing and the next, you know. And 2s are like Jesus. You know, they're this. It's like 2s. They're the giver, you know, the helper. I was married. 2 of my wives, I've been married twice, were both 2s, and they were the most. Oh, they would do things and do things and do things until they fall over for other people, you know. But the problem, see, now churches are starting to do the Enneagram all over, which you probably know, Father. You know, they're starting to do it, and because they think with their parishioners find out what their numbers are, we're going to know pretty much what kind of sins they're dealing with, you know, what kind of where they're lacking in their character, you know, and what they need to work on. Other churches are saying it's the devil, you know, so. Yeah,
it's what brought up the conversation last week. Was someone was saying in the chat room that their church said it was occultism and devilish and not to mess with it.
Like, it's just like saying introvert or extrovert. We know there's people are extrovert and introvert. If you know that, you know a lot more about a person, you know. But the Enneagram is great. It's great. But there's a lot more to it than the basics. And I don't get into it a little bit more than the basics, just so I get to know a person. Sometimes, you know, it would be fun. Sometimes we do a show because I'm a handwriting analyst. You know, I could show on the screen, you know, I could have people that are listening, everything, write a sentence, and then I could go through and I said, okay, if this is the way you do your T's, this is what it is. That used to be pseudoscience, but it's pretty much science now because for hundreds of years, the same conclusions.
Profilers use it.
Yeah, we used it. When we'd have bad checks back in the day. Yeah, we used it for cases. We'd have a handwriting analysis come in. We'd have the suspect fill out a handwriting form and
I would
compare it to the bad checks and whatnot.
I would do it for companies mainly because they want to make sure the person isn't getting ready to go ballistic, you know, because you can tell if someone's got a lot of pent up anger, you know. Serial killers have a certain way that they make a D at the end of a word that's not like anybody else does. Not all serial killers, but only serial killers that they found that make it called a maniac D. And it's where the stem of the D, instead of being up, goes out at a 45-degree angle. It's like there's the body of it and then shoot right out at 45-degree angle that way. And that's how they were able to tell the killer in San Francisco years and years ago when he would write letters to the press and they would say, oh, here's a fake, oh, there he is, because they could tell by the maniac D, you know. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting, but it's the subconscious, you know. It's just the subconscious putting your personality
on you.
I know. Yep. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Oh, and before we run out of time, I wanted to get back to the EFT again for a minute, if we can.
Yeah, we got about 3 or 4 more minutes.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me for people that want to know more about it. Oh, an easy way, if you want to go to my website, visit theafterlife.com. If you go to the EFT page, there's 2 videos on there, and that will tell it all. One of them, it's going to seem like it's an infomercial because it sounds too good to be true, but it's not. What those therapists and stuff are saying on there, we see daily, all the time. It really, really works. The second one, there's 4 veterans on there that have severe, I
saw those myself, and those were pretty compelling.
Oh, man, you know, so because it'll help people change their paradigm a little bit to say, hey, this energy medicine is real, and it really, really works, and you can get some healing. So if you have a fear or phobia, if you just dealing with daily stress, on there too, you'll see where we take a sample of blood and put it under a dark field microscope before and after tapping. It'll blow you away. what Harvard discovered and what we've discovered is that there's a beneficial physiological effect on your body when you do the tapping. And that's why we see physical healings happen sometimes, because even if you don't have a problem and you just wake up in the day, it's like you're opening the doors all over your body for your body to be able to naturally get in there and heal it instead of having it closed off. So it's like opening the door and saying, come on in, guys, come on, come on, worker bees, fix me, And it's just I can't say enough about it as I watch that. I'll have to tell you the story next time of a ex-gang member that came to me recently whose son had shot him in the head, and he lived through it, and he was at a 10. We did the tapping for like 20 minutes. He went from a 23 on a scale of 1 to 10. He said, I'm a 23. My son shot me in the head, and he lived through it. And there's a lot more to it, a lot more to this guy. He's a really interesting character. But he's turned to God. He's a lot of years in prison. He'd been shot like 8 times and didn't die in different, gang battles. He has 11 children from 8 different women. I mean, he's got a crazy life, going on.
Wow.
But by the 3rd session, he was at a 0, and he stayed that way. Where he was like this about his son shooting him. He says, I know my son shot me in the head, but I'm not falling apart every time I think about it now. Like, you don't forget, but you don't have that energy that was causing your body to convulse.
Yeah, you had to work that out. That's a good story. Yeah.
Oh, it's just awesome, So I'm glad you're letting me talk about it today, because, people are afraid to go to therapy, find an EFT professional in your area. I'd be happy to help you on Zoom. I do a lot of EFT sessions on Zoom where I teach it. In about an hour, you'll know how to do it yourself. So you don't need me very long, because when you start to feel you're going to something, you can sit down and you can do this tapping. You can do your own therapy, so it's...
it's one thing about medications. Medications aren't to cure you. It's to keep you basically acceptable in society. So I would definitely encourage anyone to do their research and try some alternative techniques such as this one, because there's a lot of good testimony for it.
People are sometimes afraid to do EFT because they're going to have to, they don't want to feel they stuff those emotions down, and they think even talking about it gets them a little bit. But I'll tell them, it's just like going to the dentist and you get a little good just for a moment, just as you start thinking, because the tapping will begin to take it down and down and down and down. And it works.
Well, Regan, I want to thank you so much for being with us.
I love you guys. I'm going to come back every week.
Oh, you are welcome.
We'll definitely have you back.
Yes, we want you back, and we want to talk more about your work and your wonderful stories. The audience loves you. So you'll be back on for sure.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime, and maybe we'll have some more that we can share. But I always feel uplifted from you guys. I can tell you're all good people.
Well, thank you.
I love that.
Right back at you.
You give off great positivity yourself.
Yeah, you shine. You guys all shine. I love it.
We appreciate that.
Sister Mary Joan and Father Chris, thanks again for being with us.
All right, everybody.
Thank you.
And to all of you, yes.
Thanks, everybody, for
See you later.
To all of you, thank you for joining us tonight. And I'm sorry that the first segment had to be so dark and negative, but, Regan turned that around really quick, didn't he? Next week, we've got a great show for you. It's going to be about negative near-death experiences, the dark side of hell, with Mary Kathleen McDaniel, new guest to this show. She has had personal negative near-death experiences, which should be interesting, particularly in light of what we've talked about tonight. So we'll see what that's all about next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, I'll see you out there in the ether. God bless everyone.